To order, and would you please rise and join me in our salute to the flag. Hand over your heart, ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Cunningham.
Was that Mike? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yes, you. We called you.
Okay, for the last time, I'm here.
Commissioner Dandy.
Present.
Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Parvin.
Here.
Commissioner Zaragoza.
Here.
Chair Morehouse.
For the last time, I'm here.
Commissioner Rooney.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
All right, present and accounted for. The agenda review, are there any revisions or
Thank you.
changes to the agenda that anyone wishes to make at this time?
Thank you.
Seeing none, then we will move on to our next item agenda. And as indicated by Mr. Cunningham and myself, this is the time when sort of the changing of the guard, and several of us are stepping off, and so I have the pleasure of presenting to two of my fellow commissioners some recognition for their service. And I'm going to start with the first one, and that's to Lou. And let me give you a little bit of background about Lou for those of you who are out in the audience or anybody just tuning in. But in 1998, Lou Cunningham worked for a local high school district and came to LAFCo as a proponent of an annexation. It was being considered by this commission, and during that process, he recognized and appreciated the importance of this agency in preserving ag land and encouraging orderly development. So in 1999, Lou applied for an appointment to fill the 4-year term as a public member on this commission, and he was appointed to that position in 2000, and he's served on LAFCO ever since then. He's held the position of a regular public member for a total of 10 years, and we're grateful for that. And he was the alternate member for a total of 6. In addition, Lou was nominated by Ventura LAFCO to the Cal LAFCO Board of Directors and was elected to the board in 2011 and served through 2014. And again, we were extremely grateful for his service at the state level. Lou decided not to seek reappointment on the commission after his term ends in January. So this will be your final meeting, sir. And we're happy to present to you this plaque. Says, presented to Lou Cunningham in appreciation of your service as a public member from 2000 to 2016 on this date. Lou. Say a few words.
Well, first of all, when I signed up, it was for 2 years.
Got away from
And then when we were sworn in, they changed it quickly to 4 years. So I was supposed to be here for 2 years. I've always believed in term limits, and I've stayed on to help because we had issues coming up with annexations of school properties into the cities, and so that's why I kind of hung around. Recently, we had a public member that had to leave LAFCO, and so I was moved up, and we got Dave in. So Dave will be stepping in for me, and he'll do a great job, and I've told him if he ever needs me, he can call me at home, as long as he does it after 9 in the morning. So, but I've had a great 16 years. I've really enjoyed it. I've been through 3 leaders, Everett and Kim and Kai, so it's been a long, long time. I think I've had, what are you, the 3rd district attorney representative too, so I've kind of outlived everybody. So anyway, thank you very much. I've enjoyed working with all of you. And I'm going to come on Wednesdays, take out a speaker card just to keep you guys honest. So.
We appreciate it. Lou, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I also would like to thank Lou. You know, I've had the pleasure of working with Lou for many, many years, not only as a supervisor, but also as a city council member for Oxnard. And I remember one of the big things that we did, and we just made it by 1 vote, was the collections in Oxnard. You know, we had a lot of opposition to that, and it was Lou and I and Ken, and I can't remember, Maitland, I think is what it was, that brought the collections to fruition. And People fought it, and now you can see it's one of the best in the county, the shopping centers, and also the renovation of the Esplanade too. And some of their issues that we had. So I want to thank you, and I know you worked for the school district for many, many years too, and did a lot of good work for Oxnard High School District, and we're going to miss you. So thank you again for your good work and your 16 years as a LAFCo member. Thank you.
You're here. Any other commissioner wish to chime in?
I'll just say ditto.
Ditto. Very good. All right, the other individual who's leaving this body is Commissioner Bruce Dandy, and I'm going to give you a little background on him as well. Bruce has served on the United Water Conservation District Board of Directors since first being elected in 2003. He currently serves as the board's president. That's a position he also held in 2008 through 2010. In 2010, the United Water Conservation District nominated Bruce to fill a 4-year term as the special district alternate member on LAFCo. And later that year, the county's independent special districts elected him to fill the position. He began his term as an alternate member in 2011, and in 2013, Bruce began a new 4-year term as a regular member on the commission representing special districts. And pursuant to the rules of the Special District Selection Committee, Bruce's membership on the commission will end when his term ends in January. And again, Bruce, we thank you so much for your service, all of the important things that you brought to this body in terms of your knowledge and awareness, questions you've raised, and another dedicated service. And so with that, I'm happy to present to you this plaque, which says, presented to Bruce Dandy in appreciation of your service as a Special District Member 2011 to 2016. Would you like to make a few remarks?
As remarks seem to be appropriate, I just want to thank the commission and staff, as well as special districts, for allowing me this opportunity. I've taken this last 6 years with the intention of, once the 6 years expired, having someone else replace me, because I thought this was a great learning experience. I have experienced that. I have found the work that this commission does to be a surprise to me, not having a background in land use and planning prior to my involvement with United Water and their issues. But I really enjoy the work that this commission has done, and I think it's the one organization that's a state entity that is the least known of any that I've come across. I really appreciate the people, again, from my fellow commissioners, alternate commissioners, and I really think that you do a superb job for the county of Ventura. And thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And any fellow commissioners? Commissioner Zaragoza.
Yes, also I want to thank Bruce Dandy too. I've had the pleasure of working with Bruce not only as a commissioner but also as a city employee. Bruce used to work for the city manager's office and other offices, in the city when I was running my department in the city. And we always had some good relationship with him. In fact, he used to work on my budget also at the city of Oxnard. But one of the things I liked about Bruce, if you ever played golf, don't play against him. This guy's a really good golfer. He can drive, 300 and some yards and no more?
No hips, no knees.
But I want to thank you, Bruce, again for your excellent job that you've done for the commission and also for United Water and the community in general.
Thank you.
Other commissioners?
Yeah, I would like to thank Bruce because he's been a great representative for special districts in the county. And he was elected from those special district people and has done a tremendous job, and I really have appreciated working with you. Yes.
Other commissioners? Oh, Commissioner Parvin.
I want to thank you both because over the years you have asked incredible questions, really well thought out, and I have the deepest respect for you and the work that you've done on LAFCo, and it adds to the credibility of our organization because of the work that you did. So thank you.
Alternates, Alternate Ramirez.
Thank you and good morning. And I didn't get here quite in time to congratulate and thank Commissioners Chair Morehouse and Commissioner Cunningham. But on a personal note, I really would like to thank Commissioner Dandy because He's been a great source of information for me, advice and guidance. He's extremely wise and experienced, despite his youth. He gave me lots of great advice as I got on city council, and that's a little bit different from LAFCo. And I just want to say I really appreciate you. Hope you are not a stranger. Don't be a stranger. Thank you.
Others? Yes.
Do we get to talk about you now?
I think that's coming up, so hold
Okay.
that thought.
Okay.
But
Will do.
again, Bruce, thank you again for all your service. So.
Thank you.
And now, because of the situation, I turn it over to my co-chair or vice chair.
Well, before you do
Hand it to
that,
yourself.
it's my honor to make the presentation to you, Carl. Carl has served on the Ventura City Council since 1999 and is currently serving his 4th term. In 2003 to 2005, he served as deputy mayor and as mayor in 2005 to 2007. As a council member, Carl has served or currently serves on the board of the Gold Coast Transit District, Ventura County Transportation Commission, Southern California Association of Governments, Ventura Council of Governments, and the League of California Cities Channel Counties Division. In 2007, the city selected committee appointed Carl to fill a term as the city alternate member on LAFCo. In 2009, the city selection committee selected Carl to fill an unexpired term as the regular city member on the commission, and that resulted from an unexpected vacancy. He has twice been reappointed as a city regular member. Carl decided not to run for 5th term on the city council. Probably a very wise decision. His current city council term, as well as his membership on LAFCo, ends in December. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Going, and thank you all my fellow commissioners and staff. It has been an interesting experience. I think, as Commissioner Dandy phrased it, this is, and I remember going from the LAFCo conferences, learning even more and more how important and how strong this agency is under state law. And I've had on a couple of occasions had to school my peers on the council when we've been in action and have to have them understand the function of LAFCo and its importance. And it serves a very important role in the state since the time of its creation in trying to get some kind of orderly development. The state would look considerably different if it weren't for the LAFCOs. Granted that each one operates a little bit differently, but I think we've got a very good one here because we've got a very good long history of protective land use in our county, which makes it special and unique. It's been a pleasure to serve as chair. I'm sorry that I decided we were in an odd year election, by the way. You know, we were odd year elections, and we changed our charter a couple years ago. So now I'm 17 years on the council, which is kind of weird. People go 17. It's not an even number. No, I got an extra year out of the deal. So,
And
but
no
anyway,
campaign.
and no campaign. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I decided it's time to take a break and let some fresh blood, and it's going to be kind of a little weird up here, I'm sure, for Kai and staff. With the whole of 3 of us going, you're going to have a reconfiguration of this body. But I know the remainder of you are very, very sharp and on top of this, and you will bring our successors up to speed pretty quickly and continue the good works of LAFCO. And so again, I thank you all for the opportunity to serve, and it has been a fun and interesting ride. And I'm not going to leave the community. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to Nevada or someplace my retirement dollar goes further. I happen to love it here, and I will stay engaged. Just I won't have, as you heard the list, I won't have a bunch of meetings in a week that have 200 pages of reports to read. So I can actually go play for a little bit.
You can read a novel.
Yeah. So, thank you all very, very much. I appreciate it.
Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, I also want to thank you, for your 17 years of service to the city of Ventura. And I know we're also members of VCTC, which is really important. And we're members of also of Gold Coast Transit. One of the things for the commission's information, we bought a brand new yard over in Oxnard for Gold Coast, right north of Costco's. It's about 38 acres, and we're going to have a beautiful, beautiful building that Carl wanted to be chair of and won't be able to. But anyway, we're going to invite you for the ribbon cutting. And we've worked really diligently on that, and he's really been a big supporter of that yard. And also, of course, we're going to miss the SCAG reports, that you give us, the reports at Gold Coast Transit, at VCTC, and all those good things that you do for the community and the county of Ventura. So thank you for your service. And are you going to join Lou Cunningham and come and give us a hard time?
May have to team up.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to comment? Carmen?
Again, I'd like to thank Carl for his service to the entire county and even Southern California. I've had the opportunity to serve on the Southern California Association of Governments while he was there, while he was president, and always good advice, strongly given, and sometimes received. And just thank you for all the great things that you've done in your career, and I know you'll continue to do it in some other form, and we'll miss you, but I'm sure you're going to be there watching us. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Carl, I just wanted to say thank you. In my short time here on LAFCo, I really appreciated your approach to running the meetings. Very graceful and smooth, and it made the whole experience very enjoyable as we deliberated on whatever was on the agenda. So thank you for that. It was very inspiring.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Recently, somebody asked me, how well do I know Carl? And I said, well, if you ever have to sit next to him on an airplane, on a trip, I would say I know him quite well. I had a big lesson. I learned a big lesson on a regional perspective from Carl, because Carl looks at things from a much bigger scale than most electeds. And he's passionate about that, and that comes through in everything he does. So thank you for all you've done for not only county, but for the state, and for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lou?
The other one. It's down at the bottom.
Oh, there we go. I just, want to thank Carl like I did earlier, but my biggest concern is that Ventura, the best city in Ventura County, by the way, will no longer have representation on LAFCo until we can convince the people on LAFCo they need to get somebody from Ventura. So, thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Any other comment?
Carl offers some very professional land use experience with his work for the county as a land use planner. And that is such a great benefit, particularly for LAFCO. And I have served with Carl on many committees, as Carmen mentioned, SCAG being one I think you're probably most proud of, to be president of SCAG, which is about 190 cities and 6 counties represented there, and did really well for us from a national perspective by representing SCAG and also, of course, at the state. But I always appreciate your perspective, because you can have all the expertise and knowledge, but it's the perspective that you bring and your priorities definitely shine through. Your efforts to change how we monetize land use statewide, it's something that you can continue to pursue. I don't know if you will ever get there, but it is certainly a worthy pursuit. And just thank you for the time and effort that you have put towards your work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to wrap it up, it's been an honor to serve with you. I've known Carl in a different circumstance when he was planner with the county, and I really feel honored that I was able to serve here with you. And I wish you all the very, very best. And you're going to be hard to follow as chair, because you've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much again. It's been a pleasure, and life will go on, with or without me. This august body has been here for quite a while, and it will continue to serve, and Lou and I will become the watchdogs, I guess, or something like that. All right, with that, then, we will move on to our public comments for an opportunity.
I'd like to comment on CalAFCO.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, okay, yes, opportunity for commission presentations and announcements, yes, Commissioner
I
Freeman.
just wanted to say we attended, several of us attended the CalAFCO conference, and I thought it was extremely well-run, extremely informative. Our own attorney, Michael Walker, was one of the presenters, and it was very informative. And I got to say, I learned some things at CalAFCO this time. And one of the things that the legislative wrap-up at the end that I thought was really significant, we all deal with our legislators in terms of the organization or association we represent, whether it's county or city or special districts. But I think some of us forget that we're also LAFCO representatives, and CalAFCO is, I think, going to need some support with our legislators locally based on the trend of legislation that's coming out of Sacramento. And I think we should just kind of put it in our brains that when CalAFCO needs help with a bill, that we make a commitment to help CalAFCO with that bill, because there's, I think the UCSB legislation to create a CSD, a community service district, is an example. They tried to bypass LAFCO. And with all the legislation that establishes the process for LAFCO, that is not an acceptable process for the people who are represented as well. So just kind of put it in our heads that when CalAFCO calls, we respond if we can. But anyway, I want to thank Kai. It was a very good experience. Thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Zaragoza.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I also want to thank, Kai for the invitation to go over to CalAFCO. Took LAFCO 101 again, and I've taken it over and over, and every time that you take LAFCO 101, you learn something. And the important thing that I picked up again is, even though I'm a supervisor and we have council members and other representatives, when you're in LAFCO, you got to take that hat off and put your LAFCO hat on. And I think that's extremely important. The other thing that I learned about SB 244, the Disadvantaged Unincorporated Communities, DUCs, I have one in my district, and how important that is, and I know the city of Oxnard is looking into the DUCs, and Nyland Acres is one of them. But as part of the new law that we have to look into that SB 244, and that's important that we understand that. We had the keynote speaker was Jean-Michel Cousteau, is that correct? Excellent speaker, and he was really fantastic. The Ocean Future Society and how important the ocean is and how we came from the ocean, and every time that we drink water and the recycling of life. It's just really, really great presentation that he did. And also the other thing that we learned was water markets and water, how important water is, and how some agencies want to become districts to be part of the water process, which eventually might come to us, and I think it's important that we understand. And just water in general was a big, big topic. One of the things that happened, there was a tour over to, what's the name of the lake up in Santa Barbara? Cachuma. How dry it is, and now they're using that lake as a conveyance vehicle more than a storage area. So it was really, really a great conference, and I happened to take Bill Gallagher, my chief of staff, with me. And he said, boy, you guys really have a lot to do, once he looked at it and understand it. And Bill's he really enjoyed it too, and he was there with me to learn about LAFCO, and really enjoyed it. And it was a great conference. Thank you. And thank our attorney too.
Other commissioners, Alderman Ramirez?
Thank you. Just briefly, I'll endorse all those remarks by Commissioner Zaragoza, and I do want to also say that I want to refer people to Jean-Michel Cousteau's website. He spoke, and it was, he is a rock star, really? being the son of his father, who I think he invented scuba diving, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
And But he talked about the danger that the ocean is, and the ocean is a source of our health, our prosperity, our life. And we woke up yesterday to hear that 2 of our county beaches are forbidden because of bacterial or something. So it really hits home. And LAFCo and land use and all the decisions we make here have a lot to do with the health of our ocean. So I really appreciated being able to go, and most of the commissioners were there, at least for part of the time, and it was a very, very good. I'm glad it was close, too. We didn't have to get on a plane.
With that, let me just chime in real quickly to say, first of all, that have been to the LAFCo conferences in the past, and I know I've missed the past couple of years. It truly is a good learning tool for everybody, and again, that's where I gained much of my knowledge, and I'm glad that our staff is staying very much engaged in the shaping of that. I want to kind of pick up a little bit on Commissioner Freeman's comments with regards to being kind of legislative watchdog. It is imperative, whether it's LAFCo. I know that Commissioner Parvin and I, both having served on the Channel Counties Division of the League, and as a result of that, sitting on the board after our terms there as president of the division. The League, of course, is paramount with local control. There's a lot of legislation, even our local legislators, who many of us embrace and love dearly and respect and support for re-election, but they sometimes introduce bills that are a little contradictory to what we are trying to achieve, and they forget the picture at the local level, and that there needs to be money and somebody to implement it, and sometimes we have to pull them aside and say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, but this is not going to be a good idea. So it's been very important, and it's good that LAFCo continues to monitor that kind of legislation in terms of what its ramifications are. And then finally, to circle back to a comment on, since we're on public comments, to some earlier stuff, yes, I will put in a plug for SCAG. The 7th Annual Economic Summit is occurring instead of the regular scheduled SCAG meeting in December. That's December 2nd. It'll be in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Hotel from, I think the time is 8 to 2 in the morning. I was on a briefing the other day with the business people committee that we have, Glue Council, and I believe our future speaker is going to be Gavin Newsom. If you've not heard Gavin before, no matter what your partisan affiliation, that guy can go nonstop without cue cards for 45 minutes and just leave you so revved up with talking about the innovation and technology. It would be an energizer just to listen to him. So I would suggest you put that on your calendar.
Thank you. That is really nice aspect of SCAG, is that we have some great speakers that come. Steve Wesley, former controller, had spoke about the new transportation economy with the shared economy, and it was a very engaging speech. We're on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. We're having a dinner event featuring him in Thousand Oaks that you're all invited to. You can get information on my website, but it talks about the driverless cars, hydrogen cars, and just looking at the new economy, a shared economy too. I think that'll be very engaging. I also apologize for being late, but I do want to also laud both Commissioners Cunningham and Dandy and how much I appreciated working with you, and I understand that happened before I got here. But Commissioner Dandy, oftentimes we have to remove our hats for our different associations, whether we're county or city or special district, and he has always really represented just I think the core mission of LAFCo, looking at the preservation of agriculture land, trying to reduce sprawl, as well as making sure we have coordinated and services and I just really appreciate the good work that you've done there and your perspective. And Commissioner Cunningham is always, you've been here for quite some time, but you really have done a great job representing the public. You just know that where you're coming from, is what you believe in, and you do represent the public's voice. So I just thank you both so much for your service too.
And more.
I did got my words in.
No more accolades. Thank you. I'm done. So with that, then we will move to public comments for items that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address this body. If you've completed a speaker card, I haven't received any that are of interest beyond a specific item, to which we'll get to those when we get to that item. All right, with that, then we will move on to our next items, which is the consent items, which is the minutes of the LAFCo September 21st, 2016 meeting, the Ventura LAFCO 2017 meeting calendar, and the budget. And number 9 is budget to actual reports September and October 2016, with the recommended action of approval of all those.
I move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by Freeman, second by Zaragoza. Any comments? Okay. I think we can just do this by voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, and that passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to action item number 10, which is the appointment of an alternate public member. There was a subcommittee of us to meet and interview those who were interested in serving as the alternate public member in the shifting of Mr. Cunningham off and the rearrangement. And so through that process, we had 6 candidates that we vetted very thoroughly. And I am pleased to bring forward the recommendation of the subcommittee is to appoint Mr. Patrick Richards as the alternate public member for the commission to fill a four-year term beginning on January 1st in 2017. And for those of you who have not yet had a chance to meet Mr. Richards, after we take the vote, we'll give him a few words to us. So are there any questions or anything with regards to the recommendation?
Make a motion for approval.
Motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Cunningham, second by Freeman for the recommendation. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And with that,
Can I
Patrick?
ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Is that person here?
Yes, he is.
Can
And
we-
we're going to bring him up right now. So,
Okay, I'm sorry.
Pat, if you'd like to come up and talk to us, and I will, full disclosure, I've had the opportunity to work with Pat as a county planner for a number of years, and I think it was a very good choice, and I'm grateful that he was willing to step up. So welcome aboard, Pat, and I'm disappearing, so it's a trade-off.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the commission for the opportunity. It is an extreme honor to come back here, work for the county for a number of years. Worked with Carl in the planning division. I've worked with Elaine since our days in the city of Moore Park. Linda Parks, I'd like to say thank you for at least letting me know about the opening in this position. It's an interest that I've had to kind of get back to share my experiences. I have enjoyed public service, spent 32 years doing that. And the aspect of serving at LAFCO, in which you're dealing with a kind of a much bigger picture, I've always been curious as to exactly how that process has worked in the past. I have not had an opportunity to spend too much time with the LAFCO organization, working here at the county as I did with the planning division. But I was always impressed with the way that the organization had not only conducted itself, but the decisions over time. You look at the county as a whole. I've been in this county over 30 years. The guidelines for orderly development, the interest to look at preserving agricultural land, all of that aspect has formulated what Ventura County is today. So I look forward very much to working with all of you. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. And for those of us who are leaving this commission, we will strongly advise you familiarize yourself with the handbook and definitely go to one of the LAFCO conferences as soon as you can. All right, with that, then we'll move to item number 11, which is the LAFCO 1607, the City of Ventura reorganization for North Bank. And this is a recommendation to receive and file. Staff, Mr. Ulma.
And before I begin, I just want to say that I am really sick, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't have to be. So I will try to power through this, and please bear with me. Thank you.
Join the crowd when I just finished about a week of flu.
Might have gotten it from you.
Maybe walking by your office, but
Okay, this is agenda item number 11. It's regarding LAFCo case number 1607. It's a reorganization request submitted by the city of Ventura that we've named North Bank. This is just an update on the status of that proposal. This update was requested by the commission at the last LAFCo meeting. And I want to stress this is just purely a receive and file item. We are not looking for direction at this point. You're free to discuss the matter, ask questions, but we are not seeking any direction at this point because the application is incomplete. A little bit about the proposal. It is a reorganization, and that reorganization does include a request of annexation to the city of Ventura. This would allow the development of 193 units on an area that's about 25 acres. The project consists of 123 single-family residences, 30 townhomes, 40 apartments, and about 5 acres of park space. On September 19th, the Ventura City Council approved a resolution of application to LAFCo. On September 20th, the application was submitted to LAFCO, and then on October 18th, LAFCO staff deemed the application to be incomplete for processing. And I'll talk about the reasons why. This is the location of the proposal site. The brown denotes the city boundaries. This is the unincorporated community of Saticoy. Now, ducks were mentioned, the disadvantaged unincorporated communities. The commission has identified the community of Saticoy as a disadvantaged unincorporated community. This is the Santa Clara River here, of course, State Route 118 here. And this is just a larger map of the site. Now, this is an aerial view of the project site outlined in red. It has historically been used for agriculture. I haven't been out there within the last year, so I don't know if it's still being used. Excuse me. To the north of the site are some railroad tracks, and beyond that, just some undeveloped land within the city. To the west of the site is existing residential development and development that's currently under construction. To the south of the site, this is the Santa Clara River, and this is the Saticoy Sanitary District Sewer Treatment Facility. Now, the Saticoy Sanitary District provides collection and conveyance of wastewater throughout the Saticoy community, and all of that wastewater is then treated at this facility here. And these ponds here are the plant's percolation ponds. This feature right here running along the east side of the project site is Brown Barranca. It's a drainage for an area to the north. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. And then this is the unincorporated community of Saticoy, and we'll be talking about some of these uses as well. This is an overlay of the approved project. This is the subdivision, and it's pretty much to scale. It's not exact, but it's close enough for discussion purposes. This is the approved project by the city. These darker areas are the interior streets, single-family residential lots here, 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 here. These larger lots, I believe, are to be the townhomes. And then the apartment complex, the high-density residential, is right here. Now, there is a park included within the proposal. There's parkland right around here. And then there is a linear park here, which includes like a walking path, some landscaping and such. So the letter of incompleteness addressed 4 matters that were either not addressed or were not adequately addressed in the materials that were submitted to LAFCo. So we did request additional data and information in these 4 general topic areas. One was water supply. The second was flood impacts. The third was impacts to the operation of the Saticoy Sanitary District. And then the fourth were potential land use conflicts. And I'll talk about each of these. And we'll start off with water supply. We asked for more data and information from the city regarding water supply because in our opinion, the city hasn't yet demonstrated that it has an adequate water supply for the project. And this is largely based on 2 documents that were approved by the city, both of which show that since 2015, because of the drought, the demand for potable water has exceeded the city's water supply. And you'll see in the 2015 document here, because of the drought, demand exceeded supply, was anticipated at that time, by anywhere from 440 acre feet per year to almost 2,500 acre feet. And at that time, it anticipated the same for the 2016, that demand would exceed supply. Now, in its most recent document, which was approved this year, it's anticipated that if the drought continues, demand will again exceed supply, not only for this year, but for next year as well. So we just requested additional data, additional information to demonstrate that there is an adequate water supply. One thing to note that in past annexations to the city in this area, there was the Parkland Specific Plan and also the UC Hanson Trust. Those projects brought water allocations that were transferred to the city, so it offset the demand for water. Our understanding that this project is not bringing any water allocation to the city. We're waiting for confirmation of that, but that's our understanding. So any demand for water will affect the city's water supply if that in fact is accurate. Again, that was part of the additional information that we requested. The second issue was related to flood impacts. There really are three documents that evaluated flood impacts to this site pertaining to this project. The first is within the Satakoy and Wells Community Plan, EIR, which was adopted by the city in 2009. This is the EIR that was prepared as part of that community plan and on which this project's environmental document, the addendum, is based. So the city is using the information from that document to evaluate the potential flood impacts of this site. Now, according to that 2009 EIR, the proposal site is not subject to flooding. And this is based on a FEMA map, a FEMA floodplain map that shows that the area is not within a floodplain. It's accurate in that assessment that it's not in a floodplain. However, our understanding is that these FEMA maps were based on data from the 1980s. That is our understanding. Again, we have yet to confirm that. However, on October 10th, we received a letter from the Ventura County Watershed Protection District that says the area is subject to flooding. And that the project is not consistent with the findings and recommendations of two additional studies that have been prepared since that original FEMA map was prepared. And these are the Brown-Baranka pre-design report, which dates to December 2005. And according to that report, the site is within a 100-year floodplain. And then an even later study, the Franklin Brown, Sudden, Clark, Baranka two-dimensional floodplain analysis from just 2 years ago indicates that the extent of flooding is much greater than previously understood, even in the 2005 report. And it estimates flood depths of up to 3 feet on the site, on certain portions of the site. And I'm going to show you some maps from each of these studies. Now again, here's Brown-Baranka. This is where the flooding concern is. This Baranka is owned and operated by the Watershed Protection District, except for this area down here that actually goes onto the project site.
Kai, did the Ventura County Watershed use the latest FEMA maps, for that?
No, they use the latest available information, which is not the FEMA maps.
Not the FEMA maps.
Right, right.
Okay.
These were two additional independent studies that were performed by the Watershed Protection District.
Independent of FEMA. Yeah.
What's that?
Independent of FEMA.
Yes.
Okay.
And Sergio Vargas with the Watershed Protection District is here if you have any specific questions regarding the flooding.
Excuse me, Madam Vice Chair. So is there a policy within the Watershed Protection District to use certain documents over others? Do they have to follow, does it say in their policy that they have to follow certain documents?
You'd have to ask Sergio.
Okay.
Okay.
And Serge is back there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Serge is back there if you...
Okay.
Can,
Okay, this is the map from the
Are you
2000...
going to answer that question now or later?
I'm sorry,
probably Sergio can probably address
Oh, do you
it.
want to answer it now?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if the district says that they must follow certain
Okay.
documents,
I have 3 more slides on this issue. Can we maybe see those
Okay.
slides and then have Sergio come up and answer
Okay.
every
Yeah,
question?
I would urge just let Kai finish his presentation, and we'll
Okay.
go for all the rest of the...
I would love to. Okay, so moving on, this is the first map, and this is from the city's 2009 EIR. It's dated 2005, so it predated when the EIR was adopted. But again, this is based on the FEMA information. The dark shading here indicates a 100-year floodplain, and this is the project site. And you'll see, according to this map, that a 100-year flood can be contained within the Brown Barranca. It does not spill over onto the project site. So this was the basis for the city's conclusion that it's not subject to flooding. Now, this is a map from the 2005 study prepared by the Watershed Protection District. Here, based on more recent information, the pink here denotes the probable 100-year floodplain. And this shows the entirety of the site within a 100-year floodplain. And this was in 2005. And then in 2014, in that study, it showed again that the volume of water coming down Brown Barranca was even greater than earlier anticipated. And here's the project site outlined in black. The red denotes flood depths of up to 3 feet. The yellow denotes flood depths of up to 2 feet. And the green, I believe, is up to 1 foot. So according to the most recent data, the site is subject to potentially flooding of up to 3 feet, portions of the site, I should say. So again, we asked for additional information clarifying the true impacts to flooding. The major concern is that if this property is elevated, as is the plan, there's going to be fill and it's going to be elevated, any potential flood water would be diverted elsewhere. So the water that would otherwise collect here could be diverted off onto other properties. That would be a concern for properties in Saticoy, the wastewater treatment plant, or even the existing residential properties within the city. So that's all my discussion on flood. Shall I continue with the others and then, okay.
Go ahead.
Impacts to Saticoy Sanitary District. We received a letter from the Saticoy Sanitary District on October 5th. As I mentioned, this district is an independent special district that provides wastewater conveyance and treatment for the entirety of the Saticoy community. And according to their letter, they have several concerns with the project, and I'll briefly go over those. The first concern is that the project introduces sensitive receptors to objectionable odors emanating from their treatment plant, and also these sensitive receptors would be subject to noise from the plant's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operations. There could potentially be sewage backups within the district sewer system. It could disrupt several existing service connections within Saticoy. It eliminates access to its primary sewer trunk line. The district needs access to maintain that trunk line. It removes current access to its treatment plant, and it may redirect floodwaters toward its treatment plant, impacting operations. And again, that's based on the flood concerns expressed by Watershed Protection. So I'll explain these a little bit. This is a close-up of the southern end of the project site. Of course, this is the wastewater treatment plant. These two tanks here, these are approximately 50 feet in diameter. They're large tanks. They receive and store raw sewage from the district. They are open at the top. They are unenclosed. These are the percolation ponds where the treated effluent then percolates into the ground. You'll see on the map here, on the subdivision, these are single-family residential. This is multifamily residential. So the proposed project will put these residences within about 200 feet of these open tanks of sewage. On top of that, in the park here, the approved plans show a playground right here and a children's splash pad area right here. Those facilities are within about 50 feet of these tanks. So the concern, of course, from the district is odors, complaints, noise. And I'll talk a little bit about the other concerns. The district currently accesses their wastewater treatment plant across this bridge and then down a road along here. The proposed project eliminates that road, and they propose access down here, which would necessitate anyone wanting to access the district going well around through the residential project, through this residential project in here. My understanding is the district was not consulted about this plan, nor did they approve it or allow for that change. On top of that, the district currently has a 16-inch sewer trunk line that comes down this way and again goes down this way through the park and then to the plant. The approved project on the plan show that this easement is going to be abandoned and the trunk line removed. Again, Saticoy Sanitary District has no intention of doing that. And so, again, another concern. Also, that sewer trunk line serves these parcels. So eliminating that trunk line would also eliminate the service connections to several parcels within Saticoy. Mark Norris, the general manager with Saticoy Sanitary District, is also here to answer any questions that you might have about the district's concerns. Okay, the last general area where we requested additional data information is related to potential land use conflicts. Now, this area of Saticoy is designated by the county's general plan for industrial. And the uses in this area are in fact industrial uses, and I've called them out here. This is E.J. Harrison, the trash truck company. This is pretty much their entire operation as far as I know. And it includes this yard here, which appears to be storage for the roll-off bin trucks, the large diesel trucks. This area here is the roll-off bin storage yard. You'll see all these dark things here. These are all roll-off bins. So these are being collected, loaded, and unloaded. This site here is the main trash truck storage yard. Based on the county's approval of the use there, it appears to be approved for the storage of up to 100 trash trucks, more than 100 trash trucks. They're obviously not here now. They're out collecting trash. The permit also allows operations to begin as early as 5 a.m. To 7 p.m., 7 days a week. This is Standard Industries. This is a metal recycling facility. These piles here are all recycled, metal to be recycled. They said they stack 30, 40 feet. You can see them from the surrounding area. This uses large cranes, big compactors for steel. It generates complaints from neighbors now. Again, we have wastewater treatment plant and the percolation pond. So the proposal will introduce residential uses closer to these heavy industrial uses. You would anticipate potential land use conflicts, including noise in the early morning hours, odors, exhaust, vibration, glare from security lights at night, and of course the visual impacts. Again, these impacts were not adequately addressed in the materials submitted, so we did request additional information on how these potential impacts can be addressed. Now I want to touch briefly on CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Now, as I mentioned, the city prepared an addendum to a 2009 community plan EIR for this project, and that was approved in September on September 19th. Now, LAFCo staff believes, and we have provided you all the letters that we have written about the environmental document, that the addendum EIR is not adequate. It is inconsistent with both CEQA and your local LAFCO policies. However, as a responsible agency, CEQA requires LAFCO to accept the document approved by the lead agency, which in this case is the City of Ventura. So we are required to utilize that addendum EIR as part of this project unless LAFCO filed a timely legal challenge to the adequacy or limited criteria are met that would allow for preparation of a new document or a subsequent document. Now, regarding filing a timely legal challenge, that would have been, it would have had to have happened within 30 days of the city's filing of a notice of determination. That's what CEQA says. The city did file the notice of determination, which started that clock, and that 30 days ended just on Monday. So in order for the commission to have filed a legal challenge, that actually would have had to happen before Monday. That would have required a special meeting of the commission. Now, I did consult with the chair and vice chair over the merits of arranging a special meeting. I decided against that for a couple of reasons. Primarily, LAFCO law allows the commission to fully evaluate all of the matters that I just discussed under LAFCO law, outside of the CEQA process. So all of those matters can still be discussed thoroughly and considered by the commission. The commission would just be doing it outside of CEQA. And in addition to that, staff has yet to determine, due to the incompleteness of the application, whether LAFCO will in fact be able to prepare a new or subsequent CEQA document. So that determination has not yet been made, and we may very well be able to do that. So that completes my presentation. And again, I just want to remind you, this is just a receive and file. It's open to discussion, but no direction. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kai, for being a good soldier and standing here with your illness. Let's begin by any questions from the commissioners,
Yes.
particularly to both Mr. Loma and the support staff from other agencies are here to back him up, and we'll begin with Ms. Freeman.
The project was approved by the city council and documents reviewed and approved by the city attorney, if I'm correct. My question is, this is a tentative map. Was it conditioned to address the issues that you brought forward? Because the map would not be able to be recorded unless the issues were addressed. Do you know if the project was conditioned because with letters from Watershed Protection District, they're not going to be able to record unless they adhere to recommendations of that agency?
No, not adequately in my opinion, nor in the opinion of the Sataquai Sanitary District staff or Watershed Protection District staff. The issues that were raised before the city actually approved this project were not adequately addressed. My understanding is that the city, if the annexation moves forward, the city can go ahead and still record a final map and go forward with the project without whether Watershed agrees or not. Watershed Protection District does not have the authority to require the city to make improvements to the project.
Just from my experience, you do have to submit a grading plan and several other documents. So Watershed does have the opportunity to comment on the recording of that map.
The approved project.
That's just from my experience.
No, and if the district had jurisdiction and had was needed, its approval was needed for a type of permit to improve within its jurisdiction, then that would be the case. My understanding is that the city is not going to seek any permits from Watershed Protection.
I will share with the commissioners that I have a number of speaker cards, and a number of those are City of Ventura planning staff, and so we will hear from them. I guess we'll send in a kind of an adjudicative role here of he said, she said on the analysis. But so we may get that information from a different perspective. Commissioner Zaragoza.
Yeah, the concern that I have is, as you mentioned, is the concerns from the sanitary district, Sataquai Sanitary District. We're going to have open tanks of sewage right next to children playing some 50 feet away. We have so many units of families and that are going to be breathing those films, if you want to call it that. And I believe that it's a health and safety issue that should have been addressed by the city of Ventura. Or I'm not sure if we can, but I think it's important that we looked at. I think it's an environmental injustice here. That concern, that's a DAC, that we talked about, that I think is extremely important. It's a low-income community that I believe we need to look at closely. I'm concerned about the flooding. I know that the Ventura County Watershed looked into it. I'm sure that FEMA is going to look into it. We're having a drought now, and it's going to rain. It's going to come, and to jeopardize those folks, for maybe 3 foot of water coming into their homes and so forth, I think is extremely important that we look into. And also the removal of the sewer trunk line to the remaining, or the folks there in Sataquai, I think might be detrimental in the future. So I think those issues are really important, and I also believe that the potential LAFCo concerns that we have are extremely important that Ventura needs to consider. I'm not sure if we can consider it now. You said it was approved, the project. I'm not sure what recourse we have, as far as making sure that these things are taken care of. Biggest concern I have, again, is the sewer plant and the big tanks open. I've been over to the Oxnard wastewater plant, and I've been to other plants, and I can tell you that they can be very detrimental to the community, especially children playing in right next to those big open tanks. So I really have those kind of concerns.
Perhaps if we have a representative from sanitation districts here to address that issue while we're on that topic. So if we might.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm Mark Norris. I'm the general manager of the Satacoy Sanitary District, and I'm here this morning representing that board. First, I think I should make the board aware, we have had a preliminary meeting discussion with the developer on this project. Some of the issues that have been pointed out here this morning, we discussed in a very high altitude, preliminary, conceptual basis. Part of the problem is the developer never came back and shared with the district what their proposed plans were moving forward. And some of the issues that exist, we may have been able to address before the hearing here today. The relocation of the sewer line, conceptually, could be something that works. What's being proposed by the developer will not work. There's some capacity issues and some line sizing and other things that I think were not taken into consideration. There are some existing customers that are connected to the sewer to be relocated. There was no provision in the plan to address that. I'd also like to say that those plans weren't made available to the sanitary district until they were made available from LAFCo, from CHI. That said, there has been a real kind of a disjointed effort, I think, on the part of the developer to include us in the process. Those tanks that were referenced, they are right on our fence line. They are biological treatment systems. This is where we have bacteria basically consuming the pollutants as part of a treatment process. They are open to atmosphere. I'd like to point out that even the best operated treatment plants from time to time have odor issues. Noise is 24 hours a day. We have blowers. We have different treatment systems out there that do present a potential noise concern. Treatment plants typically are sited in an area away from sensitive receptors such as residential communities, et cetera. And inevitably, it seems that development continues to encroach closer and closer. And the upshot of that is that the sanitary district usually ends up holding the bag financially to make whatever improvements are needed to be made after the fact. And that's certainly one of Satacoy's big concerns. We certainly want to make sure that we address and we bring to your attention the fact that Satacoy, being a disadvantaged community, has been battling a cease and desist order from the regional board on other areas of their treatment plant, has spent a lot of money. We've more than doubled the rates in the last couple of years to address that. If we were to have concerns from this new residential development impact our ability to do what we currently do, if we had to make further improvements for noise and odor containment, that would certainly be a hardship to that community.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Mark one question?
Certainly.
Mark, on this open tanks, do we have a potential of that overflow from those tanks? Can they come up to a certain point and spill over?
Anything's possible.
Yeah, okay.
We're hoping that's not the case. It's never happened. I don't think that there's a high probability of that. My biggest concern would be having children playing in close proximity to an open treatment system. If, for lack of a better description, if Johnny got sick because he's playing within 50 feet of the treatment plant, is there exposure to the district, whether it's real or perceived? I think that putting a residential development in close proximity to a treatment plant has some obvious issues associated with it, and I'm sure your board can understand what they might be.
What are the long-range plans for the district? I know in the case of the city of Ventura, as we've had some expansion plans there, we have also negotiated with Montalvo to phase out and work their way into the full system for the city of Ventura. What's the plans for you since you're on the edge of the city?
Well, I've made contact with the city of Ventura's planning department to pose that question. I was made aware that there's nothing in the foreseeable future that would result in the, say, the Satacoy wastewater treatment plant being abandoned, if that's what you're talking about, Mr. Chair, and having that flow diverted into the City of Ventura system. I've also talked with the utility manager or director and to find out if she could enlighten me on anything that may be in the works. And the best information I have as we speak, there's nothing currently happening in that area.
So you anticipate being there for a while yet?
I would say at least for the next
Decade.
5 years. That's,
Okay.
I think that would be a reasonable planning window.
Okay. Other questions of Mark? I'm sorry, yeah, Commissioner Parvin.
Is there like an industry standard as far as distance from a plant such as yours?
Well, I don't know if it's an industry standard. I think there's a common sense standard that would probably come into play here. I think, the closer you get, the higher the potential. I addressed the Ventura Planning Commission quite a while back regarding either this project or one similar to it in the same general area. And I made the point that having a residential unit closer than 300 feet to the treatment plant would not be a good idea. But I think the particular circumstances, the type of treatment plant, whether it's contained in one form or another would have some impact on how close you'd want to be or not. And of course, how well the plant is operated certainly has a factor in whether it's an odor generator or not.
So did you talk to the Ventura City Planning Commission on this specific project?
Not necessarily on this specific project, but more from the standpoint of when and if the city was planning at some near point in time in taking over or annexing Satacoy, for lack of a better description, and probably rendering that plant obsolete. But it was not specifically to address questions about this project.
Did you go before the city council in Ventura to talk about this?
No, I
project?
did not. And keep in mind, there were no final plans submitted to the Satacoy Sanitary District for review. We certainly would have been more than happy to comment on those plans had we been given that opportunity, but we were not.
Thank you.
Alternate Member Rooney.
I have a question. Thank you. When you said that you addressed the Planning Commission, was that the County Planning Commission?
No, it was the City of Ventura Planning Commission.
I thought you just said you did not talk to the City
Not-
Planning Commission.
Okay. There has been, at least my recollection is, this is a second project for that general area. I think that we commented here a while back, it may be the same project, and forgive me my ignorance. I did address the Planning Commission and voice concerns about the proximity of residential development to the Satacoy treatment plant.
So was that recently that you addressed?
No, that was probably a couple of years ago.
Okay, so during that, okay, I was trying to clarify whether or not it was a city or the county planning commission, and I think you said that you never received any plans on this until you received them from Mr. Loma about a month ago?
Right, that's correct.
So when you addressed the planning commission, you didn't see any plans for them?
No.
Okay, isn't the planning commission for the cities, is that public record where the documents are included in the?
There are. I don't know. I wasn't privy to. I didn't sit through the Planning Commission, and I didn't review their process. But the point was, during a discussion about this preliminarily, perhaps if staff can roll back the slides to the aerial, I believe I can kind of clarify what Mark is talking about in terms of.
Because
They're-
what I'm struggling with is that
Yeah.
I heard him say, no, I didn't talk to them, and then, yes, I did speak to them. No, I
I
didn't
think-
see any documents, and I just want to make sure which is
If I might, I think I can
accurate.
clarify
Okay.
the issue here. There were conceptual plans that showed the basic site layout, that showed that the development would be in close proximity to the treatment plant. The plans that I'm referring to that we haven't had a chance to look at are the more detailed plans that show the actual engineering and realignment of sewer pipes and things of that nature that we take exception to.
Go back, Kai, you just passed it,
So
just that,
wouldn't
fine.
the city of Ventura, as the lead agency, have provided all of that as public record?
Well, I will let planning staff address that. There may be a bit of confusion on Mark's part. This triangle here is already under development. That was a separate approved process from the one that you're looking at now. And so there was some discussion at the time the council went out to review this site, recognizing the entirety of the whole area, and there were some similar issues. Let me just kind of leave it at that.
I think you're correct, Mr. Chair.
Other questions of Mark while he's up? Supervisor Parks.
Do you have capacity issues? I would imagine you would be the treatment plant for this development.
No, the wastewater generated from this development would be tied into the City of Ventura system. This actually has doesn't connect into our treatment plant. The relocation of the sewers and other things that we were talking about earlier are really tied to the potential abandonment of the access road along Brown Barranca, where we currently have a sewer main.
Okay, because you did mention the word capacity, so that's where I was wondering if you were talking about capacity.
Capacity in terms of the relocated sewer pipes.
Okay.
We currently have, I think, a 16-inch sewer that, at least based on the plans I reviewed, are being replaced with an 8-inch line, and technically that wouldn't work.
And the type of treatment that you have there, is it, you have sludge in beds, or is it just all in the tanks and then you remove it with the truck? What is the
We do generate sludge, and we use a geotube technology to dry those sludges. The sludge goes through a biological process to basically stabilize it.
So you have like digesters?
And it's above ground. No, we have aerobic digesters is what we use.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that treated sludge is ready to be dried out, we pump it into what's called a geobag. And it's kind of a sludge sausage, for lack of a better description.
Mm-hmm.
We fill it up with the treated sludges, and they're allowed to dry out within that bag. There's surface area that over time wicks the moisture out of the biomass, and then when it gets dry enough, we landfill it.
Okay. I could see where that could have some odors associated with it. I just wanted to comment that I really appreciate this process, that we are able to, even before it's a complete, able to have this before us so we can hear from staff, hear the concerns of LAFCo. I mean, oftentimes when it gets to LAFCO, it's too late for any of that. So I do appreciate the fact that we are here today being able to look at the issues that are involved in this, because otherwise we may not have had an opportunity to get adjustments to it. And I know we'll also be hearing from other staff. I'd also be interested in hearing too.
Let me also add to I don't want to say exactly the cloudiness. The city of Ventura several years ago underwent a process to develop a Saticore area plan. The idea being as that area developed, particularly on those places that were subject to the city, which is part of the disagreement here in terms of analysis. But the county also just underwent a Saticore area plan as well. In a perfect world, I think it was, that there was a fair amount of communication between those two entities. So there are eventual plans for that area, one way or the other, under the county's auspices or the city's, in terms of continued development. So I don't want to say that further gums up or muddies the issues, but there is a big picture for that area eventually, and it will have some ramifications or impacts on your districts, I'm certain. Any other questions of Mark while we've got him here? With
Mr. Chair, I just want to reiterate again that my biggest concern is the health and safety of those children that are potentially going to be living right next to that open tanks there, and I think it's like I mentioned before, it's a duck, and it's a low income community, and 75-80% of the people that live there are minorities, Latinos, and I think it's important that we recognize that too, And I know that the developers worked on this for many, many years, but to have open tanks that close to children playing and people living there, it's like the airport problems, you know, when the airport's there and then people start building around the airport. After a while, they want to close the airport. And I think, first of all, and the highest priority in my mind is the safety and health of health and safety of the children and families in that neighborhood. I just want to share. I'm not sure what we can do as LAFCo members or maybe the city of Ventura. I know that Mark mentioned maybe 300 feet might be an acceptable limit, you know, from the tanks. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking out loud. But that's my main concern.
Okay. Alternate Ramirez.
Just a case study in raising wastewater rates. Check out Oxnard and the tremendous opposition to doing what I consider very necessary. The folks, you said that the rates doubled.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get, what's the outlook for raising them again?
Well, it would be challenging, to say the least. As I said earlier, it's a disadvantaged community. Doubling the rates was a challenge. I'm sure it impacted all the families that currently live in Satacoy in a significant way. I would hate to have to make subsequent improvements because of this project, because I don't think the ratepayers in Satacoy are very well positioned to do that.
Would that not be something that the developer or the city would be perhaps at least in part responsible for?
I don't know what the negotiations were, and I'll let city staff respond to that in their capacity. I don't know.
Thank you.
Any further questions of Mark? With that, then, there were some questions raised with regards to Brown Bronca. Thank you, Mark. And so could we have support staff address that? Sergio, is that you? Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioner Mojas, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Sergio Vargas with Ventura County Watershed Protection District. I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning and Permits Division. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have regarding the project in our review.
Well, there were some questions, I think, raised throughout, so I'll start with alternate Rooney.
Thank you very much. The question went back to that there are reliance upon different documents regarding the flood zone. And my question specifically goes to, do you have policies in place that say that you rely on specific documents over other documents that might be available? So it's, in this case, the comment was that they were relying upon the FEMA documents as opposed to the most available data in place.
Typically, on planning projects, we rely on the latest available information that is also consistent with FEMA recommendations. In this particular case, the Watershed Protection District invested in studies in that area, recognizing that there will be long-term issues regarding flood protection. And so in 2005, the district commissioned a pre-design study for Brown Barranca to identify alternative solutions that could bring about flood protection for the area. Subsequently to that, we have been working with, at the county level, with FEMA, who has initiated and almost completed a flood insurance study for Santa Clara River watershed. That includes the river, Santa Clara River, and major tributaries. Interesting enough, the study, as a result of many other issues, was limited to the area from Freeman Diversion upstream. And the area downstream from Freeman Diversion to the ocean was delayed. In that section happens to be where this Northback development is located, and also includes Brown Barranca. So there are some preliminary studies from FEMA that have yet to be completed that arrived at similar conclusions. So our latest study for 2014 really focused on, we really focused on the commingling flows from several tributaries to the Santa Clara River. And there's a number of them, like Franklin Barranca, which is to the east, Brown Barranca, and Southern Barranca, that affect the east Ventura and the Saraco area.
So if I could clarify just a couple of statements. Okay, so when Mr. Loma mentioned that the 2009 EIR was not subject to flooding on that site, but then your current study says that. Is that the 2014 document you're referring to?
Like Kai Loma indicated, we first identified that the area was subject to flooding in 2005 in the Brown Barranca pre-design study. Subsequently to that, we confirmed that the area was subject to flooding in the 2014 study that we did with, it was more of a regional floodplain study that we did to identify the baseline conditions to then work on future solutions. If that answers your question.
Oh, partly. The 2009 EIR, who was that prepared by? Was that the City of Ventura? City of
Yes.
Ventura said it's not subject to flooding under that EIR, but the 2014 document that you prepared says that it is, right?
Yes, this is based on the fact that most EIRs look at the formal record. In this particular case, it would be the flood insurance studies that are prepared by FEMA. And like I was indicated, the current record that stands by FEMA is the 1995 study.
95?
85.
85.
1985 was the last time that FEMA came to Ventura County and did analysis in Santa Clara River. They adopted the flood insurance studies in 1995 when the communities entered into the program, National Flood Insurance Program. Since then, nationwide, FEMA has been directed to remap the nation to better represent the flood risks. As you know, there are significant issues nationwide for FEMA and flooding issues. So they have this national flood insurance mapping effort. They are working in Ventura County at this time, and they are working on Santa Clara River watershed to remap some of these same areas and updating the maps to a more latest available information.
Okay, and I just want to go back to your first statement about the policy. So you said that it was your practice to use the latest available data.
Yes.
But is there a policy in place that says you point to a specific document? Or is it just practice?
It is a practice to utilize the latest available information. It is a practice also recommended by FEMA, and this is why we do that.
But no policy?
There is no stated policy adopted by the board or the district that says you need to use the latest available information. Although looking at the hydrology manual, it does require to develop information in order to do designs. So you, by default, would be using the latest available information.
Okay, as a practice, but no policy in place?
It's an implied.
Is there a written, I guess my question
it's not
is there a
specifically
written policy that says it?
At this point, there's no specifically
Okay.
written policy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, the question I have is, the Ventura County watershed said it could be potentially in a flood zone. FEMA hasn't updated their maps and so forth. Do you look at maybe having those people not only have homeowners insurance, but also flood insurance on top of that? Because of your studies, and even though FEMA has not updated the maps to date? Because they're going to have double already of the sewer rates. And now they're looking at having not only homeowners insurance, but also flood insurance on top of that. You potentially see, because again, we go back to a dock being a low-income community, and now they're going to have double rates in sewers, and now they have additional insurance, not only homeowners, but also flood insurance. Will the Ventura County watershed trigger potentially maybe the insurance companies coming requiring flood insurance?
If FEMA has to revise mapping for this area. After the development is in place, if this area is identified in the flood hazard zone, which will be the 1% chance of flooding every single year, yes, they will be required to purchase flood insurance if there are federally backed mortgages involved.
Yeah, 'cause I know where I live in Oxnard. I live close to the golf course. Now, FEMA then is now saying it's a flood in the floodplain. Now I'm required to get flood insurance, not only for my personal home but for other homes too. Now this individuals here are going to be living in a low-income community, again with double sewer rates because of the current sanitary plant, and potentially having to have flood insurance. So I guess the question would be, what the insurance company, you probably don't know this, look into the fact that the watershed district is saying it's in a flood zone, and potentially now they're going to require to have flood insurance.
Typically, flood insurance use the federal record of flood insurance rate maps. So as those maps are revised and those flood hazard areas are updated, those areas that are included in the newly mapped areas will be requiring to purchase flood insurance.
Thank you.
Question two.
Yeah, Commissioner Parks.
There's a way to not be in the floodplain, correct? They
Yes.
can just build, is it like walls, for example?
Yes, and you can actually raise the project.
Right.
And I believe that's what
Those are
Kyle
the
Loma
basic
indicated.
two options, raise it up or put in walls, and those would probably make the project more expensive. And I guess that gets back to passing the costs on to the people who are going to live there, because if the project took care of the flooding danger, then they wouldn't have that concern.
In addition to that, if the site is raised, that means that somebody else is going to receive the flooding.
Somebody else.
Right. But that's why you need the walls. Would that take care of it?
That is correct.
Thank you.
And that is one of the concerns from the Watershed Protection District's perspective on the ordinance, under WP2 ordinance, that requires that characteristics of the flow in our jurisdictional channels require a permit if they're changed.
And there's also the concept of basins, right? Detention basins could be added so you wouldn't have the flooding downstream. So there's all kinds of mitigation that could come into play that would make it so potentially you don't have the higher insurance rates. Two, you don't have the impact of flooding on the adjacent properties. And that is not being looked at because they're not acknowledging the potential of flooding that you say is there.
That's correct. And that all depends on the mitigation measures that are proposed under the project.
Just one final question. Do you think eventually it will come out, FEMA will step up and say, yes, you need to meet the requirements?
FEMA, in their process, they remap areas of flood hazard to be able to recoup their investment and identify the appropriate risk. The local communities are the ones who are responsible to provide the necessary services to, as an organized development, to eliminate the risk of flooding. And I think that's one of the issues that the Watershed Protection District is trying to impress upon that development, to make sure that the appropriate mitigation measures and flood proofing is provided so that the community can be safe from flooding.
Thank you.
And that's what's happening in North Oxnard right now with the lack of a levee for the so many feet there in the Santa Clara River. And now the city is picking up and the residents is picking up the tab for building that wall to keep, the flooding, potential flooding in the future, and also hopefully eliminate the flood insurance. But that's happening now in Oxnard, as you know.
That is
In
correct.
South Bank, they're on the Ventura Road.
For additional background information, I will share with the commission that the city of Ventura for some time has looked at our East End and many years ago developed a capital improvement deficiency study, famously known as SIDS. And that was for a number of things that we had shortcomings with, and worked into that was an incorporation not only as development occurred to get the proportionate amount for the development to pay in, but of course, we're successful in passing a sales tax, and much of that, I will not be on the council, but I can assure you pretty much the current council has been talking about infrastructure, and much of that is towards some kind of issues that have to deal with stormwater and sewer water that won't be picked up through our regular user rates. So again, I'll leave that to city staff to elaborate on. But as developments occur, I'm fairly confident that the city staff is evaluated and works with Flood Control District in terms of mitigating these impacts and recognizing the improvements that are necessary along this Bronca and elsewhere. Commissioner Freeman.
I just had a question on the adjacent project that's graded. Was that built on the 1985 FEMA maps? Do you know?
I would assume that it did.
So we're at the current project
Yes.
that's under construction.
That's correct.
And is the proposed project at the same grade as the adjacent? Do you know?
Typically, the general grading in lay of the land is higher in the North Bank development as it flows towards the river.
So just in general, it's higher, it's at a higher elevation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Alternate Rooney.
I would just like to ask Commissioner Zaragoza for clarification. I heard your concerns about the health and the safety for the children, and certainly understand those. And then there was the financial cost of the sewer rates, that it was going to be doubled, so an additional financial impact. Isn't this project going to be annexed in and be a part of the city's sewer rather than going to the Saticoy sanitation, and so they wouldn't have the double impact of the sewers?
Yeah, my connection to the double rates, my main concern is health and safety issue of the residents that are going to be living there, the children that are going to be playing there with the open tanks and so forth. And I think Mark mentioned that potentially right now they're looking at doubling the rates, and so I figured not only is the potential of having those open tanks and the health and safety issue, but also on top of that, the doubling of the rates, for the residents there.
But for that project, that's going to be on the city, not on Saticoy.
I'm not sure if that,
Yes,
Mark.
this project will be, as indicated earlier by Mark, this is all going to be tied into the city's sewer system. We'll have no impacts on the
So they
sanitation
wouldn't be
district.
part of the Saticoy
Is
sand
that-
and the rates according to that.
If I might, Mr. Chair, my comment regarding the doubling of rates has already taken place. That was specifically to do improvements within Saticoy's sanitary district facilities. The concern that I was mentioning was any subsequent improvements that may be driven by this close residential project, such as additional odor control or noise attenuation or projects such as that, would fall back on the residents of Saticoy to pay for. That was
That was my concern. The other quick question too, and I think the Supervisor Pratt mentioned that by raising the property to some level to keep it from flooding, you're going to flood the rest of the folks. Is that right, Sergio?
That's Sergio.
And we talked about retention centers and so forth, et cetera, but
Yeah, typically, depending on the proposed improvement, for instance, raising the site will take the space where currently flooding occurs, therefore displacing that water in volume somewhere else. And in some instances, it may be other existing communities.
it's got to go someplace and probably
Yes.
to other properties. Yeah.
Typically, that's surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions of support staff on this? Okay, question of Kai, Mr. Dandy.
And we will get the planning staff?
Yes.
Yes, we will. Kai, I just wanted to clarify, you went through CEQA a bit, and there was not a challenge to the CEQA document provided by the city, as you explained. But back in September, you provided a letter to us that referred to a March letter that was sent to the city of Ventura that had a statement that city stated in the general plan final EIR, quote, as specific boundary adjustments are proposed in the future, the city will conduct CEQA analysis of applicable government code provisions as required by LAFCo, end quote. So just from my understanding, and the commission will need to deal with it in the future, there would not be a CEQA challenge. You were hopeful that the commission could address all of the issues that you had previously mentioned related to CEQA under the LAFCo Commission's general authority. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so there would not be a need for a new CEQA document, though you're seeking clarification from the city on many of these conditions.
Right. Typically, the process, the CEQA process, addresses many of the concerns that come before LAFCO. In this instance, the flooding, land use conflicts, that kind of thing. We're trying to encourage the city to do just that, to encourage, to address these issues in their environmental document. So it's done when we have it. That wasn't done in this instance. And under CEQA, we are now obligated to utilize that document unless we challenged it in court or certain criteria are met that would allow us to move forward with a new document. But if those criteria aren't met, we are obligated to utilize their document. Now, as I've said, it did not adequately address these issues, but because these issues can be addressed under LAFCO law, we do have the opportunity to analyze those and consider those before a decision is made.
Okay, and then I wanted to seek clarification to Alternate Commissioner Rooney's question. From what I heard from the other speakers, FEMA had last done a mapping in 1985. The city relied on the map that was provided to them from FEMA dated 2005. In 2005, the Watershed Protection Agency determined that the flood area included this property, which would be in conflict with the FEMA map. And in 2014, the Watershed Protection Agency has even confirmed further that this is in a floodplain area. Is that accurate time frame of the documents?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can I,
Commissioner
questions
Parks.
too. I don't recall really looking at compatibility issues. Is that something that LAFCO has within their purview? For example, just from being a former city council member and all realizing you're going to put homes next to a place that's going to be unloading trucks all day, you're going to get a lot of calls and then early in the morning, all that kind of stuff. Is that something, is noise one of those things that we would look at?
Yeah, absolutely. It does fall within the purview of the commission. One of the factors that the commission is required to consider is adjacent land uses and land uses on the site. And if that, of course, is industrial, then the commission does have the discretion to make sure that those land uses are compatible.
Right. And then also regarding the question with the environmental impact report, if we find that it is inadequate, have we already given up our ability to challenge because we didn't challenge it at the time when it came forward? I don't know if it's like a normal applicant or a normal comment from the public. You usually have to exhaust your administrative remedies, right?
With respect to the city's CEQA process for this project, that can no longer be challenged. The deadline to challenge that expired no later than this past Monday. And so as far as the city's CEQA process, that's done.
Okay.
And your body would have to use that document as the CEQA document for this proposal. The other alternative to suing, which, as I said, is no longer an alternative, that Mr. Loma mentioned, is the possibility of the LAFCO stepping in as the lead agency to do additional CEQA work. So instead of the city having to do additional CEQA work, it would be LAFCO that would require that additional CEQA work. And without going into the nuances of CEQA this morning, there are limited criteria, as Mr. Loma mentioned, under CEQA where in a particular situation LAFCO could step in as the lead agency. Mr. Loma has indicated until he receives the additional information from the city, he can't analyze or consult with me in assisting him in analyzing whether those criteria exist or not. If they don't exist, then the CEQA process is done.
It's kind of a catch-22 if you don't have the information to determine whether the CEQA document is adequate to challenge the CEQA document.
Yes and no. It depends on the portions of CEQA that apply to a particular project. And in this case, this project comes through a particular pathway where the EIR being relied upon was for a community plan. And there's a specific provision in CEQA that says here's how you deal with additional CEQA work for a project in an area that's already had a community plan EIR done for it and certified. And so it's the criterion in that CEQA section that's at issue here, not the usual scenario that some of your commissioners may be familiar with, where an EIR has been done, time has passed, and now you're just looking at has there been substantial changes since the EIR was done. That's actually how the city analyzed this, but that's not really what's at play here. It's the more particular CEQA section on community plans that have had EIRs adopted for them. So in some cases, yes, there's a catch-22. In this case, if LAFCo were to step in as a lead agency, that's separate and apart from the city CEQA process, so the statute of limitations period doesn't come into play there.
Thank you. I would be interested to see if the area plan that the county did considered the flooding issue with the updated information, but that's neither here nor there, but I'd be interested in seeing that. That too had a CEQA document.
Two things. Let me first of all confirm that Mr. Loma did reach out to myself and the vice chair to discuss whether or not a challenge should be made within the time frame. As he indicated, a special meeting would have been required of us. After further consultation, we determined that a special meeting would have been difficult, and we weren't going to do it. So that allowed the clock to run as it ran. The second is with regard to the compatibility issue. I can assure you that my council had extremely robust discussion on that, to the point that, as indicated by Commissioner Zaragoza, we oftentimes place things closer into harm's way, and then the party that's been there for a long time suddenly becomes the guilty party and has to move. Airports is one of those fine examples. That led to a further analysis that we sent our planning staff on to look at those areas around our city that we may be seeking annexation or development on in the future that might run into these similar scenarios. So it was not discounted at all. It was part of a very, as I said, robust discussion by the council. There was many concerns expressed about the proximity to this, but that being said, the council moved forward on a 7-0 vote, even after that robust discussion, to send it to this body. Commissioner Freeman, you had a...
I just was going to comment that I look forward to hearing from the city at this point.
Are there any other questions of Mr. Loma or any of the support staff of our legal counsel at this point? Because then I do have a number of speakers, and they will be representing the City of Ventura's viewpoint. Mr. Rouse.
If the chair and vice chair had moved to hold a special meeting, just logistically, what's involved in that to get everyone in together last minute for future reference?
We'd have to identify a time where at least a quorum can meet, that they're available. We would have to provide adequate notification. That's just to get the meeting scheduled, and I don't know if Mr. Walker has anything to add to that as far as the legal issues.
With a special meeting, there are shortened notice requirements. Normally, it's 72 hours notice. With the publication of the agenda for a special meeting, it can be a shortened time period. I don't think we've had a special meeting of this sort in my time advising LAFCo, so I can't say that LAFCo has a particular practice of giving 72 hours notice, even if a lesser notice period is required. But the period, I think, would have to be at least 24 hours notice.
And we could have accomplished it. I mean, that's not the issue. We really could have arranged for it. It was the other issues that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, thanks.
And even though I'm from the interested party city, I've tried to take as neutral position with regards to that and conferring with the vice chair on the availability and need to convene a special meeting just to make that determination. So, okay, if there are no other questions of staff or support staff, I do have a number of speaker cards, and most of these are in regard to representation of the project. I'm going to exercise a little bit of chair prerogative here on my final chairing. So while we have the 5-minute rule, we're sitting here in kind of, as I said, an adjudicative role, and more importantly, there are 3 of us who will no longer be on the commission. So I think it's important to flesh out as much information as we can for the remainder of you who will be sitting here at any time in the future. So this may go a little bit longer. I will allow that. I won't allow people to drone on for 20 minutes. I don't know if there's a tag team approach to this particularly. But since it is a city project, I will start off with city staff. Mr. Ward or Mr. Lambert, do either one of you prefer to be the first hitter and everybody else bats after that? Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeff Lambert, Community Development Director. I'll go first.
We'll start the clock after the
And what
dispersal of information there.
Yeah, what I handed to the clerk of the commission is our response letter to the incomplete letter we received from your staff. What's been given to staff is a version of that, but he'll also get us all the attachments. So we are delivering that to you today. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation. What I'd like to do is make some opening comments, sort of frame the conversation from my perspective, turn it over to Dave Ward, our planning manager, who will actually walk through the issues. I'm confident we can do it in about 10 to 15 minutes total. And then whatever questions you might have, we can stay as long as you need us to do that. I want to first obviously congratulate the commissioners that are leaving their posts, and in particular your chair and our council member Morehouse. I know this is a lot of work and you take this job seriously, and we appreciate that. I also want to just remind the Commission that this project has been really in limbo for a couple of years, in large part because of comments from the LAFCo staff and the county that have caused this project to be really delayed for quite a while, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that at the end. I want to talk a little bit about how unusual this appears to me to be, this meeting today. We came to you in September to let you know we filed our application, and mostly because we had been told by staff that it was anticipated it would be incomplete for reasons that we didn't agree to, and we wanted to make sure it was on your radar screen. The application was filed, and then it was deemed incomplete in October. What's interesting and why this seems unusual is we got a letter of an incompleteness, which we as a city do all the time, and the letter gave us 90 days in which to respond. That 90 days would have expired in mid-January, and today we're now responding. So to have this level of project-specific dialogue at the detail that you've had for the last hour and a half seems odd to me, and that's what makes this an interesting process to the city. But I want to make sure it's clear to the Commission that we did take the comments seriously and provide a very detailed response to every issue raised in that letter. Although I just also want to note that today, based on what the conversation that we've heard, it appears that although this is not an action item, that you're actually having a debate about the completeness of the project and the merits of the project in a pretty real way, and that seems unusual to me. It seems frankly unfair and not very balanced from the city's perspective, and I just want to make that point clear. In fact, we didn't know this was on the agenda today until we got an emailed notice after it was posted. So we were not provided any update information in advance to be prepared. We were busy responding to the incompleteness letter, and that's, again, part of what seems unusual. I want to say first that we think our application as filed was complete. We really do believe that we provided a complete application. However, to be cooperative with staff, we took the time, and I can tell you a lot of time, to respond and provide the letter that's with you and all the attachments to make sure that we tried to make it clear, again, that we think all the information is before the Commission. I think that the Commission will understand today that you have everything in front of you to make the right decision and act on this annexation, and we hope that will happen soon. In my view, it's inappropriate to have this level of questioning the city's land use authority that's happened so far this morning. We take our land use authority seriously. We also made sure that we looked at the issues of adjacency. I can tell you that when we debated this project, we have been debating this for a long time. This property was designated in the 2005 general plan as the land use that it is today. It was reaffirmed in the 2009 community plan that this is what this property should be. We've looked at this from that perspective broadly for years, and this is very much consistent with where we've been all along.
Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry to interrupt, but based on your statements, I do see us receiving and filing this document today. And if you and the other speakers wish not to speak, I would be willing to make that motion at this time.
Well, we have more to say.
All right.
Yeah,
Please
thank you
continue.
very much for that. I want to make it clear that another thing that's a little bit awkward about this situation is the former head of the county watershed protection district is now the city's public works director. And that always makes this interesting. And I've talked to Tully Clifford, and he understands that the city's position on the watershed issue is actually consistent with what he believes the city's position should be. So I want to make that point as well. What we're all here asking for is a fair hearing on the merits of the annexation, and we think we deserve that and hope that the commission will allow us to have that soon. I want to close just by making a comment. I was here yesterday talking to the Board of Supervisors, and that conversation was about homelessness and affordable housing. I was proudly describing to the board, two of which are here today, how much the city has done to deliver affordable housing in the city of Ventura, and I'm very proud of that. This project is part of that solution. This is a project that provides family-oriented single-family homes. It includes inclusionary housing, which is affordable to the community, and multifamily, which is considered moderate housing. So we've provided a lot of housing. This project is part of that solution. And the delays that we've seen in this project over the last couple of years are worsening the city's situation where we have a less than 2% vacancy rate, and our cost of housing is going up 9% a year. We're really trying to address that issue and go forward. I'd like to turn the podium over to Dave Ward, our planning manager, who will walk through the PowerPoint presentation we have, which will hit on each of the issues that were in the staff's presentation to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Mr. Ward.
Thank you. Sure, you know how to move forward. There we go. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, present for you. Mr. Lambert covered why we're here today, so I'm going to quickly just get a few context points. This area has been in our sphere of influence for quite some time. In fact, the 1989 Comprehensive Plan identified this to be a land use for residential, so it goes back for a number of years. The 2005 General Plan reaffirmed that direction as a neighborhood low designation. And all of the context of the industrial areas and things, the Barranca, all of that was part of our knowledge as we adopted that general plan. More specifically was a Satakoy Wells community plan that involved significant neighborhood level planning and covered the 6 areas of what we consider the Wells and Satakoy community. And in area neighborhood 5, this is a particular component to fill in that last puzzle piece for that neighborhood. So again, the vision for the community has been set for quite some time and has thorough engagements. And in fact, this property owner set aside their expectations to move forward to wait out a community plan process and engagement. And I can tell you from my career in other places I've worked, that never happens. But this applicant did that. And we're proud to know that the final project that is implementing that development code is all the community benefits, the neighborhood housing, at all affordable levels that Mr. Lambert just covered, and it is actually filling that vision of the community. So for the issues that were raised quickly, and again, I will agree with Mr. Lambert that we aren't analyzing the project today. We're trying to get to the next step, which is it's a deemed complete application, certification for filing, and to move things forward. But that said, we have provided a response. You have the letter before you. There were questions raised about water and water supply. The city has committed, through its conditions of approval on the project, to serve the project. If there are additional groundwater allocations available, those need to be rendered to the city. That's part of our conditions of approval. So those questions have been addressed. They were part of our original filing. There is no additional information. As far as the ability to deny building permits, Mr. Lomo raises the question of building permits are ministerial. There won't be any action to deny those. Well, actually, that's not correct. We are subject to our drought contingency plan that was required under state law. All agencies must have that contingency plan. It was about a year ago. It identifies the stages of our drought, and when we reach the stage where if we do have limited and no additional water available, covers all uses within the city, then there is the ability, and it's called out specifically, resolution by the city council, and we would stop issuing building permits. We would also stay all those approvals, and at the time when we do have water, then those projects would go back online. So actually, we've addressed that as well. The biggest issue, and you heard a lot about it today, and it's actually probably 3 or 4 pages of our response, is on this question of flooding. I want to make it clear, and it's really important, this is all about standard of review. In fact, you really don't need to read any of the additional information in our letter, because the standard of review is the FEMA process, the adopted FEMA maps, and the standard of regulations in which all projects, whether you're city, county, must adhere to. It's all about standard of review. We answered that exhaustively for over 2 years working with the Watershed Protection District. We had a series of at least 3 or 4 meetings. We've covered that clearly. It's all standard of review. So that may be just a legal question as you move forward with your council, but we believe we've satisfied that. In this instance, the new letter actually raised issues of the Parklands project. So we want to be clear about Parklands that is a very different project. It actually has, as you can see on the graphic, shows that that specific plan had the brown baraka going through the middle of it. Therefore, FEMA and the Watershed Protection District required that the project identify possible additional flooding issues and direct the consultant to complete a more specific and directed analysis to further refine the floodplain mapping as it related to the project, because it was located in the floodplain shown, as you can see on the graphic. In contrast, this exercise and analysis is not required for the North Bank project because the current FEMA and firm did not identify possible flooding issues in the North Bank development site. That is fundamental. We're talking standard of review.
If I might clarify for the commissioner's sake, Parklands is another approved project that's actually under construction. It is north of and upstream on the Brown Barranca from this site.
So the area is outside the adopted 100-year floodplain. The area does not drain into the Brown Barranca. The new development, as approved by the city and under conditions of approval, convey all water to the new street system. So that's to the west, not to the east. The final floor elevations established will be in conformance with the city flood regulations. And I think I heard part of your discussion earlier going from a tentative to a final track map. That's all that process of all the engineers, and I'm not an engineer, but all the engineering teams, including our city engineering from Public Works, our building and safety officials, the applicants' engineers, they all work together, including with the Watershed Protection District, on finalizing those maps. So those consultation processes will continue. We seem to be at the point of application completeness, not project analysis, although this hearing today feels like we're definitely into the weeds of analyzing the project. Standard of review needs to be the focus. As I indicated before, the FEMA and standard rules apply to city and county lands. I believe Commissioner Parks raised the question. There was the Satakoy area plan that was processed. In fact, that project pretty much was happening during the same time and actually got through its environmental and completed everything, and we're still working on our process here. So I actually have an answer for you in that regard. It was analyzed. And in fact, their environmental review and the area plan itself does exactly the correct thing. It relies upon the appropriate standard of review. It discusses the County of Ventura Plan Division initial study, that potential flooding issues related to new development will be addressed on a case-by-case basis during the discretionary review process. All new development will be subject to all the current laws and regulations identified. Local regulations are based on hazards identified by FEMA mapping. So that answers your question. And we actually raised that during our discussions, is why is the county seeking different rules and regulations and process of unadopted studies from 2014, and they didn't even adopt that in their own county area plan? We didn't really get a response on that one.
But they did include it in the environmental impact report for the area plan. All the new updated information is in their EIR for that.
Using the FEMA, but not the 2014
No, it
study.
includes the 2014 reports in the EIR of the Satakoy area plan. It is in it.
Okay.
I'm looking at it online, but it is in it.
Okay. Well, the analysis point of the impact measures relate upon the existing rules.
The studies are in it, yes.
We disagree with that point.
Okay.
As far as the other questions relate to the Satakoy Sanitary District, this was part of the Satakoy Wells Community Plan EIR, which found no impacts. So again, that adjacency issue of land use and conflicts was addressed during the 2009 EIR. There are no impacts to the district because the project does not connect to it. Claims of inability to operate, create sewage backups, and undue financial burden are false, and that's identified in our letter. The project design was specific to be over 300 feet away from the treatment plant.
Mr. Ward, can you mention that again? What did you say about the sanitary, that they're false? Can you share that again?
Correct. That there are claims in the incompleteness letter for Mr. Loma that the district will not be able to operate. There'll be sewage backups, and there'll be undue financial burden on the district from this project.
And you don't believe that could happen potentially?
For all of those three items, no, because we don't connect to their system.
Okay, but it could happen, right? Even though it is not connected to your system.
We don't know what the nexus would be for that to occur when we don't connect to their system.
Yeah, I think, and so in your analysis, then the potential harm or health issues to the residents here was not taken into consideration.
It was, and I have some more here.
Okay.
I can continue. We did have communications with the district. They did not attend our hearings, but we did actually reach out to the district. We also understand through their website and other information that the district uses, and I think he described some of it today, bladder systems. They developed a whole new system in 2003, which is cited on their website, that addresses fugitive odors and describes how it's all contained within those bladders. We did actually have a few residents that attended our hearings, and they did speak to that they don't have any odor issues, and those are neighborhoods just to the west. We modified the project with conditions for a notice to property owner. So those notices go both to single-family homeowners and to the renters for the multifamily project. And the site design was important. It wasn't just that,
Can I stop you? Sure. So the folks that you contacted says they don't have any odor issues and so forth. But potentially we have new residents that are going to be coming in that might experience that. Is that correct?
And that's why the Planning Commission put the condition on for the notice to property owners, so we can be clear for those new homeowners.
It's a disclosure type thing?
Correct.
As opposed to whether it's a health or safety issue. It's more of a disclosure. If you're going to buy there, right, that could potentially happen.
For disclosure, that's correct.
Excuse me, did you say 300 feet?
Over 300 feet,
over
yes.
For
So our,
excuse me, Chair Morales?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to clarify because I guess, I don't know if there's are they still in the building, do you think?
Sanitary district, I don't know where Mark got off to, but, he's got it back up, all right.
Okay, so, Mr. Norris, sorry?
Jones, I'm the operations superintendent for South Coast.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Norris said that he did not meet with the developer and he did not have any plans until Mr. Loma provided the plans to them. But you said that you reached out to the sanitation district, they did not attend their meetings.
That's correct. When we were producing our environmental document, our planning staff had direct communications with the sanitary district. They were provided notices as well. So the letter that was attached to our incompleteness determination with that laundry list of items is actually new to us because it was not proposed or provided during the Planning Commission
So
or
I
the
guess
council
my question
process.
goes to the sanitation district as to why they didn't attend when there's a project that might actually directly impact them.
Well, tell them to respond to, yes.
We did actually attend one of the planning commission meetings. We sat in the audience and listened. The Bononis actually sat right behind me when I sat in the meeting. And it was brought up at that meeting them to go talk to us. We did go walk the site with the developer at the time and a guy from the design company, Jensen Design. And we expressed all these concerns at that time. And at that time we were told they were going to go back, put together a plan and bring it to us for review. Never heard from anybody again.
But there was there
And
a
I've
first
never
plan?
had any conversations with any of the city planning staff.
Okay, so you attended the meeting as an audience member, and then you walked the site. Did you see any plans at the time you walked the site?
No, it was just all conversations on how the line went through, because what I seen originally was a tentative track map that showed the easement that you see up there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Continue, Mr. Ward.
Okay, thank you. So relocation of the sewer lines is part of the tentative track map and will be finalized as we go to the final map. There will be no structures on any easements. The access road to the district is still provided. The project, with its conditions, had a series of them, and they're a part of the Planning Commission's resolutions. Conditions 38, 40, and 80 through 92 all relate to that final engineering efforts and what's required by the city. Since the Parklands project was brought up, I'll digress for just a moment. That process spent about a year and a half, maybe a little longer, solely on the issue of addressing the final map and any issues related to flooding. So the city takes its process of conditions of approval seriously in implementation, and we will spend the time necessary to resolve any of those issues as we move forward. And that's the appropriate tool of a tentative to a final map. The SB 244 duct issue was brought up today. The balance of the duct is actually on the east side into the old Sataquai community. I'll let you know as another example, the city takes its process very seriously. SB 244 compliance, we were one of the first communities to complete that study. In fact, it's cited as a model. I get calls from various places in the state about how our analysis was addressed, and it included all the utility issues, including the sanitary district. In fact, City of Oxnard called me last week as they're preparing to work on their compliance of that study. The last area, second to the last area, is really on the land use conflict questions. And this is a bit surprising because that is all about what our city process is through the planning and development process at whatever permit level it is, including this one that involves annexation. But we addressed all of this in a very lengthy entitlement process. It implements the general plan, vision, and the Sataquai Wells Community Plan, as I mentioned before. Mr. Lambert covers provides our housing at all affordable levels. We also have community benefits happening as envisioned by the community for the Barranca Trail and the park components. So all of that is actually implementing land use policy from 2009, now at the project level. Lastly, it's consistent with all the LAFCo policies. It's consistent with the guidelines for orderly development. The site is not subject to a Greenbelt agreement. The site is not designated prime ag land, does not constitute leapfrog development. And in fact, the municipal service reviews conducted by your board in 2008 and again in 2012, where our sphere were brought back at certain points, always maintain this one. So if the question today, as it seems to be unearthing through this discussion, is about appropriate use and land use conflicts, the time to have addressed some of those would have been when it was right before your board going, well, we should be pulling back the sphere because we've now recognized, well, this isn't appropriate adjacent to industrial areas. That didn't occur. So the city and the applicant has been moving forward to really process this project appropriately. My last area, which actually wasn't part of Mr. Loma's comment letter, but it is part of his staff report, is on the CEQA process. So I wanted to make sure that we touched upon within his staff report today, talks about the executive officer's role and when they can deem an application complete or incomplete. He cites that it's receipt of the environmental documentation and whether CEQA process was fully completed. It's affirmative to both of those. It's not a question of whether it was done adequately or not. It is, have we done the environmental process and have we provided all that? And we have done all of that in a lengthy process. It is true that we did an addendum to the 2009 Sataquai Wells EIR. An addendum under state law only requires one reso, doesn't even require an initial study or analysis. We went to the degree of actually completing an initial study that's about 40 or 50 pages long to substantiate and be very clear about our use of that tool that is granted under state law for the use of an addendum. We also did courtesy circulations because an addendum doesn't require advance public notice, but we did that. And we provided that to all the county participants as we were working on this project. The comments received resulted in no changes to the project. And we, as lead agency, reviewed all of that carefully. There are no substantial changes or change circumstances under which the project is to be undertaken and have been identified, which would require major revisions to that EIR. No new information has surfaced that the proposed project would have one or more significant effects not previously discussed in that EIR. Standard of review, it's the FEMA maps. It's not additional unadopted 2014 studies. Project or circumstances surrounding the project does not meet the criteria to require subsequent EIR. And it's also important to note that there's actually been recent case law that actually focuses exactly on this point, that the use of the addendum as substantiated by court decision, Friends of College of San Mateo Gardens versus San Mateo Community College District, I think it was April or June of this year, gives deference to the lead agency in using the addendum. An appropriate tool in which we all acknowledge the CEQA process is darn challenging, but it does provide avenues by which we do our work and ensure that we identify the policies and we identify the impacts, and we can show that this is not the case, that this results in a need for a new EIR. But even more importantly, LAFCo was part of our 2009 EIR process. In fact, we have specific comment letters from LAFCo during that process, appropriately at a community plan level, where you're looking at what's being proposed for this neighborhood, what are the impacts, what are the potential land use conflicts and those things. We actually have communication from LAFCo Executive Officer on June 30th, 2009, which states that LAFCo will, the EIR will be used by LAFCO in the evaluation of these future boundary changes. So that's directly acknowledging that this, where we are today, you would be using that EIR, and we as the city have appropriately used the addendum to clarify any points, including 50 pages of initial study to show that, yes, it is substantiated that the addendum tool is adequate. So in closing, and we're here to answer any questions that you may have, including other team members on technical points, but we believe today that your decision and everything we've provided, because in fact everything in those letters is not new information. It's expanded to provide the point of our original application, but you have everything today in which to not decide the project, and we're not asking for you to decide the project today. We're asking for you to not receive and file, but in fact to accept and direct the executive officer for a certificate of filing. And then we will move forward, because we do want to work collaboratively to get to an end result and to finally finish this last puzzle piece for our community as envisioned, and have a great project that provides community benefits and very needed housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any additional questions of Mr. Ward? Ms. Freeman.
Curiously, is this your letter that will be the final response to LAFCO?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have on my list Mr. Kolwitz and Mr. Rosengren and Ms. King to all speak. Are you just going to elaborate and pick up from the comments of Mr. Ward, or?
Correct. If we have a different question that comes up, we're part of the team that can respond.
Okay, but it's not necessary that they all speak right now.
Correct.
You've covered most everything. Okay, just for the sake of expeditiousness and everything else.
Certainly.
I do have two other speakers here. I will ask, since they've addressed us at the last time, and I know that these have a slightly different spin than the technical stuff that comes out of staff, but I will allow Mr. Daly, who's the applicant on the project, to address us if he'd like, and then be followed by Mr. Vanoni, who is the property owner. I will ask that you kind of keep your comments somewhat succinct. I think we understand the technical issues as opposed to the emotional issues.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to add to that. I think, well, I'm glad Commissioner Zaragoza is back. So as the sort of partner with the Vanonis, as we spoke before, he brought me on board to team up with him to go through this process. And we went through a long process. We started in 2004. And the Vanoni family, it was important to them they didn't want to push. They wanted to wait. And we were told to wait till the community plan came out. And that's what we did. But through the process, and I think, John, I want to reply to one of your comments. The sanitary guy's a good guy. We met with him on the site, and in concept, we're all in agreement. One of the things we did do as a result of that meeting is all of our units were pushed back 300 feet. We were up close to it before.
So they're no longer...
No residents within 300 feet.
Because I've worked with you before in the past, and
yeah,
we've been projects. Yeah.
Wagon wheel.
Wagon wheel for forever.
little project there. So, Commissioner Zaragoza, that's one. Number two is the park location of the splash pad and stuff. It's fungible. I mean, we can move that around. I think you make a good point. Kai makes a good point. We welcomed Kai's letter a couple years ago, and we addressed it, and we went into it, and we had a year delay, and it was tough. It was a tough year delay because we said, no, we don't think you need to do this. Our attorney said, no, you don't need to go back out. And the city said, we were literally waiting to get our planning commission approval, and Jeff said, we're going to postpone it. And it was tough. It was a tough day. But we took out all the comments, and we addressed them. And it was a long delay. I like comments from other agencies that make the project better, but right now, this is really tough because we thought we were done with the project level stuff, and this is now basically more, perfunctory. This was in the sphere. It's not subject to SOAR. There's needed housing. All the boxes were checked. We even went the extra mile to address this stuff from LAFCo.
And I got to share with you that I haven't been in LAFCo since I was with the city. Then I came to the county in 2008. So I just started being a LAFCO member, about 4 or 5 months ago. So this is all new to me. And when I saw that, of course, that when you have open tanks, sewage tanks next to children and families and so forth, there's a concern. But you're saying now it's going to be 300 some feet away from.
Yeah, the pragmatic part. Forget about the fact it was already supposed to be annexed. It was in the sphere. The city identified it as residential in their general plan and everything else. I'm still the guy who needs to make sure it's a good community because people choose whether they want to buy a home there or not, or whether they live there. I don't want odor or noise. I physically walked that site after our meeting. I listened to the generator, the noise. I kind of drew the line that day. So that helps. The process helps. I want you to know, and the park area is fungible. We can move that. I think you make a good point there. The other thing is it wasn't a controversial project. I've been in some controversial projects, and this one had no controversy. We had unanimous approval from design review, unanimous approval from planning commission, unanimous approval from council. Commissioner Morehouse was sitting on that, and it went through a process. I think at this point, let's see if I make any other points that would be helpful. And I grabbed Mark, and I told him we're going to see him right away we don't have any final plans yet for those little details because we were in the planning process. And the whole part about doing the final plans is after we get through.
Because you and I had the same problem over at Wagon Wheel when we were trying to move all those folks from the mobile home parks.
Yeah, and they're there. It works. It takes a while. But we've been at it a while, and I think the FEMA thing is really straightforward. As a guy who does development, I need standards that stand still, and what are they at the given time, and FEMA's it. FEMA's big. And you don't want to go out there and say it's anything else, John, otherwise half the county is going to have flood insurance map. All those existing residents, if you take all these sort of studies that are being done, you don't want that. If you start going down that direction, you're going to have lots of homeowners that are going to be upset because now you've switched them into something. FEMA's the whatever staff said, they're the standard, and that's what we go by. The last thing is, I think there was the flooding, the land use. Again, Harrison, we had a letter from them that said they're good with the way we're doing it. They wanted the disclosure, but they liked the fact that we went 300 or plus feet from them, and we put up the apartments closest. So the closest units are the apartment units, and they're kind of designed as a courtyard configuration. So we're really thoughtful about the planning. That's it. I think that there's a lot of great people involved in this process. I don't think it would be fair to have us do more analysis when the project's 182-page set of conditions. It's been asked, it's been answered, and it's been dealt with at a really high level. So we would ask that you would deem this complete, move this to a hearing, have action, and not require another EIR. I don't think that would be sort of unfair to the whole process. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Daly. Rick Giroux, are you going to want to speak at all? No, just here. Okay, very good. So with that, Mr. Vanoni, you will be our last speaker. Again, I would ask that you keep it somewhat succinct. We've heard from you before. I think we understand the parameters.
Right. So thank you for the opportunity to speak again. I'm going to very quickly go through the history again. We purchased the property in 1954 to farm, and we're still farming it. The property adjoined the existing Venoni property that was purchased in, I believe, 1918. In respect to that, we have never experienced any flooding from the Brown Branco in those almost 100 years. Throughout the years, to begin with, we were surrounded by agriculture when we purchased this property. And throughout the years, with other annexations and development, we are completely surrounded now by development. Okay. And also in respect to the noise issue, this is just my personal thing, but I'm not an engineer and all this, and don't quite understand all these studies as thoroughly, but I don't see how the noise that would come from Harrison would be that much worse, or if any worse, than other projects that are being built now are right up against the freeway, which is 24-hour noise. We were also encouraged by the fact that we were told by the city that they had deemed this property, if annexed to the city, best use would be residential. Well, that's what triggered us to go ahead, or we would probably still be actively farming this property, which we are. And also the water issue. If we can't develop the property, the only other option for us is to farm the property, and we'll use even more water in relation to the drought. We're going to use more water unless we're going to be expected to stop farming, because water is number one in farming. So that's basically where we're coming from now. So, okay.
Any questions, Mr. Venoni, from the commissioners? Thank you again for coming down. Okay, with that, are there additional questions from any of the commissioners to any of the people who were public speakers?
I think we lost our Watershed Protection District staff.
Yes, we did.
We did. But just looking at the Saticoy area plan that the county did, the EIR that the county did, and the appendix, which references the most recent studies, the emphasis that I see is that it is the fact that we have an ordinance at the county that requires mitigation if you are in the 100-year floodplain, regardless of whether it's shown on FEMA or shown in the most recent reports, and that it requires permitting. But because this is not within the county, it's looking at being annexed into the city, that it would forego having to get that permitting through the Watershed Protection District. That's my understanding. And I would just want to know if that's the case, and that will be something we'll have more information on. We also sit as directors of the Watershed Protection District. And the concerns about adding water to the flood control channels that are operated by the county would be something else that would be considered. So it's understandable that the county has put in standards in their area plan that require mitigation, and yes, on a case-by-case basis, but it's based on the most recent updates that we would be using, and that makes sense. Because this is within this would be within a city if that can be basically ignored. So that's something that I think further information then can come to us when we actually have the hearing on this, if they complete the plan.
Well, perhaps I might take a quick second with city staff if they'd like to describe if there's a difference between the city's standards and the county having an ordinance with regards to
the flood control district. Is city staff comfortable in elaborating on that?
Thank you. The project doesn't drain into the Barranca.
Okay.
So, yeah, it doesn't drain into the Barranca. So that's been covered and provided to the Watershed Protection District, provided to the Planning Commission when these same questions were raised, clarified with the City Council, responded to in our incompleteness letter. We don't drain into the Barranca.
So all the storm water will be directed through into the city's storm sewage system or storm drain system.
The new street network, all of that, it all drains to the west, not to the east.
Okay. Appreciate that clarification.
As far as you know, you don't need to apply for a floodplain development permit from the Watershed Protection District.
I believe that's correct. I can have the engineer assist with that.
Mr. Giroux. Yeah.
Rick Giroux from Jensen Design, the project civil engineer. We did, just as background, we did a floodplain development permit for property on the east side of the Barranca for Standard Industries in 2013, at which time Couch showed the current data storm event contained within the channel. That was approved by the county. That was, because my understanding is because it was in county jurisdiction, we had to obtain that permit from the county.
Okay, so you did at that point.
This is in the city. I don't think we have to obtain one from the county.
Okay.
But I do want to reinforce that.
And this is west. This is west of the Barranca.
This is west. This project's west of the Barranca.
Because it does state agricultural areas located west of the Brown Barranca will be completely inundated from 50-year storm events or greater, based on the newest studies, right?
Yes, and that's what we've been spending the last couple of years trying to decide. Is we got the 2005 report. That's the one I used for that floodplain determination for Standard Industries. We started this project in 2013 as the tentative map level, using the same data, offering up the same results. 2014, we were given a new report. That's the one that's explained in this letter.
Right.
There was some mention about the flooding being 1, 2, 3 feet. My look at the legend that goes with that exhibit says it's 0 to 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, and then they change the color bar to represent 1 foot to 3 feet. So, you know, it looks like it could be 3 feet, but our understanding there's a low point in the topography. The depth wouldn't be 3 feet unless the water all of a sudden ponded up 2 feet above.
And that's that Franklin Brown, Sudden Clark Barranca
Correct.
report.
That was the most recent one we got. So underlying all of this, there's 2 points as the design engineer. If we were in a FEMA floodplain, we'd have a whole nother level of permit to obtain, map modification, exactly what Parklands is going through. That's just the start. The second part is we have to protect these units from flooding. City staff, city departments, they oversee that process. They're not saying ignore what's out there. All they're saying is we don't have to get a CLOMAR. If a map was issued tomorrow, putting us in a floodplain, that would completely change.
I understand that, and I'm just saying, as I look at what the county envisioned in their area plan, it had this kind of secondary protection that if they come forward knowing that we have the new data, that they would have to get this floodplain permit, which would then use the new data in determining that permit. But and that's why I was just asking if you need to get the floodplain clearance from the county, then it would go through a process that it sounds like you won't need to go through.
Can you give us a citation of that? Because
Yeah,
we
it's
reviewed
in the environmental impact report. Section 4 is under environmental impacts. It states the county floodplain management ordinance requires that any proposed development within 1% annual chance 100-year floodplain, and this one has already been identified as being within a 50-year, including site grading and temporary or permanent storage of equipment materials, shall require the issuance of a floodplain development permit or floodplain clearance from the County of Ventura Public Works Agency, right? And it says, while local regulations are based on hazards defined by FEMA mapping, the provisions included therein remain adequate to mitigate the increased flooding hazards reported in the FBSC. That's that most recent report. So they were looking at that as kind of a mitigation. The county would be looking at that FSBC report.
It is tied to the floodplain, though. And I have that same
Absolutely,
language.
yes.
It's the floodplain. So the project's not in the floodplain. So that's the nuance here that we've been trying to clarify for many years.
I guess that is the question then. You know, here it says it's in a 50-year floodplain, everything west of that barranca. So at any rate, I think the answer I'm going to get, and we'll get it back to us when we actually have this before us, does this require the Watershed Protection District to permit or not? And I think that's something that I'm still not sure of.
Additional questions of any of our speakers? Mr. Dandy.
I just had the concern that it seems to me that there is a floodplain issue, and that staff asked for an update based on the letter we received back in September, based on Mr. Baroni's comments at our last board meeting. We received an update. The request is that we receive and file this, which I'm prepared to make a motion to do. But I just have a curiosity question. If this is in fact in a floodplain, and if the city's relying on a 2005 FEMA map, doesn't that expose the city of Ventura to a greater liability if it proceeds with this without addressing that? And my second concern as a special district representative is that there doesn't seem that there was sufficient communication with a special district that is directly impacted by this, particularly if there's talk about removing their sewer line and the impacts on residences that are outside this project area that are connected to that sewer line. And that concerns me, and I would expect it to be a concern in the future.
Okay. With regards to the city's exposure, I have to put some reliance as a council member on my staff being aware of that, including our legal staff, that we would not put people in harm's way. So I guess there is going to be a continuing debate about as to whether or not this is identified in a floodplain and what the appropriate response is. The county had one analysis, it sounds like, from their Sataquai area plan versus the analysis was done by our staff in the city. So that's...
We hopefully will get a little more information on that, because we do require new residential development to get that permit, but it may not be if it's in the city.
Okay. Let me ask this of the commission. Before we take any action at all, we were provided this information, and this is always difficult for any of us in any of our normal capacities when we're given, I hate to say 11th hour information, but you don't have time to sit and read this. Does anyone want to take 5 or 10 minutes to sit and read the city's reply letter, or do you think you've heard enough testimony and have enough concept in your head to continue with that additional information as being provided here?
Could you repeat your question?
Well, do you want? I'm just saying, do you want to take a?
We're just receiving and filing this report.
Yeah, well, and that's going to be my second question: is with regards to the information that's been given here, do you need time to sit and digest any of this?
Well, obviously we can't read it all, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, that's why I was going to take a brief recess for 5 or 10 minutes if that was necessary.
You know, one thing also, I know we have a motion on the table, but we really didn't delve into the concept of where you're going to get the water. And I know that's, a much bigger question, but that is also something that it was also within our purview. And I know the city has already made their decision that will be dealt with, but that is a big question mark.
Well, let me, the next question I have, though, before we move forward is to turn to our council. This has been brought forward to us as a receive and file recommendation by staff. Is there any other authority or any other action that this body can take? There was a request by the applicant or the city for us to take a slightly different action with regards to moving forward. I will express my personal concerns that there are 3 of us who've heard all this information will not be here at the next discussion of this, so that we're relying upon some new players, and that can create some difficulties into itself.
Under the Brown Act, the only action your board could take would be to receive and file.
Okay, as long as that's clarified for all of us.
So
Alternate Rooney.
I would like clarification on that because the agenda item listed as an action item, not an informational item.
Receive and
So
file.
It's under action items. It's a staff recommendation to receive and file, but my understanding is the board can make any determination. That's a staff recommendation.
That's incorrect. The Brown Act would be determined by the receive and file language, and that's the only action the board could take. It doesn't have to receive and file it, so I guess the other option is to take no action.
That's right.
The only action the board could take would be to receive and file.
But, I mean, can't a board go against a staff recommendation?
Not the Brown Act.
Under the Brown Act?
That would be no.
It's a
No.
recommendation.
Well, our recommendation
no?
from our council sounds as if, though, the way it's been noticed as a Brown Act notice is that we can only act on receive and file as opposed to taking any alternative action. That's correct? That's my understanding, Mr. Walker?
That's correct. If you don't want to follow the staff's recommendation, then you don't receive and file it. That's the only
That's
action
the
you
only
could take,
alternate.
other than
Alternative.
receiving and filing.
Okay.
We could also add to the motion that we would like more information, but I know that will be coming once they complete the application. But I think that to me is where I would like to go, is just to get more clarification, but I think that will come.
By receiving and filing, it's basically taking into account all the information that's been presented here today for the next step of this body, whenever that is to occur. The city is giving this body some urgency to act more quickly, but that's a different story.
So I'll second that.
Yes, sir.
Subject to.
And may I mention also, thanks to, in part, Mary Ann Rooney, that we are taping these so new members can watch this or listen to the tape. So that will be helpful, I think.
Yes, very good.
So
Okay.
I do make that motion to receive and file.
Second.
I have a second
And that
by.
includes the information received today by the city of Ventura.
Okay.
That included.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Dandy and seconded by Mr. Zaragoza. Any further discussion on this? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Mr. Chair, I want to thank Jeff Lambert, for coming over to the board yesterday regarding our homeless issues. And my understanding is that the city of Oxnard also approved it last night. We allocated $120,000 towards that, and hopefully in the future that we don't have to put our people in the armories and maybe find appropriate homes for them. But I want to thank you for your input on that last night.
And as a footnote, I want to thank the commissioner for their consideration and listening to all this. Again, I'm going off my counsel. This is something that will all happen. None of this will happen on my watch in any of these capacities, but I can assure you that it has been a long time. I've watched the Vanonis struggle. I've watched them be encroached upon. The process occur with the development of the Sadako area plan is tested to by city planning staff. So it's been a long time coming. And again, I will confirm that it was a rather conflicted council on this. Although we ended up with a 7-0 vote, there was a lot of concern about incompatibility issues. There was some discussion about water. But there's also the plus side of affordable housing, which is something that's very much needed in my city. So it wasn't an easy slam dunk with the Ventura City Council on this issue. So anyway, the future LAFCo will be taking it up, and I thank all of you for your attention on that. Thank you for attending today. We still have one item left on our agenda today, and that is the professional services agreement for audit services for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016. Mr. Ullman, do you want to elaborate on that? And again, the action recommendation on this is simply receive and file.
Yeah, this is just an informational item. At the last LAFCo meeting, the commission did authorize the chair to sign an agreement with our auditors for audit services for fiscal year 2015 and 2016. We just brought this back as an informational item to demonstrate that it has happened. That concludes my presentation.
And I have signed that on our behalf as the chair, so I will entertain a motion for this action.
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Freeman, second by Parvin. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. With that, then, we move to informational items. Mr. Wilma.
I am pleased to inform you that we have received the last of the apportionments from special districts. There was one holdout It's a small cemetery district that's going through some changes, and they weren't aware that they were obligated to provide us with an apportionment. But we have received that finally, so we are completely up on all of our apportionments. Excuse me. And as you know, we do not have a meeting in December, so our next meeting will be the third Wednesday of January. And I would just like to take a moment to say that these past several years, in my opinion, this has been a very effective commission. And in large part, that has been due to Chair Morehouse, to Commissioner Cunningham, and Commissioner Dandy. I, as your staff, have appreciated your objectiveness, your desire to further the mission of LAFCo, and your consideration of all the viewpoints on every matter that has come before us. I've appreciated it, and you will be missed. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woma. Any other input from any of our commissioners? Alternate Commissioner Rooney.
Thank you. Commissioner Zaragoza mentioned earlier today Senate Bill 244 with the disadvantaged communities. And so I noticed that there are requirements for LAFCo, and I'm not sure if we already have some sort of executive summary that kind of outlines what our roles are, but if we do, I'd love a copy of it, and if we don't, I'd love to at least have some briefing about the LAFCo role in Senate Bill 244.
And I think that's up to the adjoining cities, right? You might want to expand some on that.
Well, there's two aspects of SB 244. One is a LAFCO obligation, and another is the city's obligation. When SB 244 was first passed several years ago, LAFCOs were required to identify disadvantaged unincorporated communities that were within or adjacent to the city's spheres of influence, which we did. And we adopted those as policies. So it's a policy within the Commissioner's Handbook. The Commission identified Nyland Acres just next to Oxnard, and then, of course, the community of Saticoy, adjacent to the city of Ventura, as ducks. Now, one of the requirements of SB 244 is that, as it's written, is that if an annexation is proposed by a city of 10 or more acres adjacent to that duck, then the city is also required to submit an application for annexation of the entire duck. There's a couple of criteria that would be, that would exempt the city from this, but it wouldn't be met in either of these two cases. Now, that 10 acres is subject to a policy by the commission, so the commission can change that 10 acres. And as a result of the North Bank project, the city of Ventura came to this body several years ago and requested that 10-acre provision be increased to 28 acres, specifically to allow for this annexation proposal to be pursued without the requirement that they also submitted an annexation application for the ducks Saticoy. So that's the provision for LAFCO. There's a whole nother provision for the cities that provides that when they update their housing element for their general plan, that they have to provide some type of an evaluation of what it would take to provide a full range of services to these ducks and a cost for that. So that's what the city of Ventura did, and that's what the city of Oxnard is in the process of doing.
Yeah, my understanding too, Mr. Chair, is that the city of Oxnard is working on that. Dr. Williamson we're working with the Planning Commission, and we saw some documents where they're taking that duck to the city council to make sure that they're following the law under 244, SB 244, and for future processing too.
Right. Two taglines I will add is Mr. Woma's right in the fact that this specific project we were just discussing did come to talk to us to concern to the quantity of acreage before it triggered the need. Remember that the law was put in place to stop many jurisdictions, and we saw this a lot in the Central Valley, which particularly has a lot of lower income communities, were cherry picking, and they were stepping out, and they were grabbing pieces of land that would be profitable to them and leaving entire communities behind in terms of improvements. And so that was the intent behind it. When the city of Ventura did annex the aforementioned parklands, which is north and upstream from the Barranca, that forced our hand into finally getting Montalva into our city. And we'd had a lot of fights, actually. Montalva has been resistant to being in the city of Ventura. We're back to the times of Mr. Braitman being the executive director here. They fought tooth and nail, and that gave us the advantage to leverage them into our city. Now, we may regret it because they're a very vocal community, but that's a different point. But that being the case, that's very important. The last thing I'd just like to note and share with you, at SCAG, we've had many discussions. There was a document developed several years ago called the EnviroScreen, and it was to look at these disadvantaged communities. There was concerns about how it would impact on CEQA, but it was a tool that was devised to try to figure out, based on income and poverty and a whole bunch of number of other factors.
It was also where waste sites are and things.
Yeah, there were social justice. There were a number of things to look at. But we've also had some vigorous discussions at SCAG about the terminology of disadvantaged communities. It particularly comes out of our brethren down in Imperial Valley, which is a very poor county. The terminology we're trying to even work at SCAG is getting away from using that term disadvantaged communities, because it's kind of like when you keep telling kids, well, you're not worthy or you got problems, that they start to hang their heads and not so proud, and we don't want to identify. So we may be starting to change that terminology to, I think it's SB 35 or whatever the driver was, bill, required communities, instead of using that term disadvantaged, because that has some real negative connotations to parts of the communities, and so we're trying to work on that positively from SCAG's side of things. So just thought I'd share that with you. Any other final comments? Mr. Cunningham.
I just want to thank you all again for 16 great years, fun. I've met a lot of people. There's been a lot before you. A lot have gone by the wayside. Ken Hess and I are still great friends. He's moved to Texas. We talk a lot. I just
I thought
want
he went to Minnesota.
He went to Minnesota. Now he's in Texas for some reason. I don't know why. I'm not sure who he's following, but anyway.
Texas.
But I just want to thank you all. Like I said, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. I'm here if you ever need my opinion on anything. Don't be afraid to call. I'll give it to you. Thanks again.
Mr. Chair, I just want to thank everybody too in the commission and all the people that are watching to have a happy Thanksgiving.
I was going to say Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, all the above.
Carl, I just also wanted to echo, as Lou did, my 6 years. I really enjoyed the professional relationships that I've made with each of you, and I hope those will continue. If there's any need you have, to call on me. I've also invited staff. Curious about Santa Paula and its future, just as we've had these discussions in the last couple of years. And I really wish Mary Ann the best of luck stepping up here, and David. I think you will have a different mix of a commission, but one that I think will move forward and do what's best for this county. So I just want to thank you all.
And I ditto all those comments as well, and thank you all for all your service and your continued service. And we can create a cheering section out there or something, right? Okay, good.
We'll never see you out there.
Like Mr. Cunningham, if I'm called upon, you may show up. I figure I've warned my own fellow council members. I can probably cause more trouble on that side of the dais than I can up here. So be careful.
Let me just say to Pat, you've seen the meeting this morning. You sure you want to be there?
Thank you all. Have good holidays and Happy New Year to you.